transfer.
Up and down and
Even Karen's comments is on the side of the field.
And the old Hatfield.
there's the invite.
And let me look at the date.
It used to be, I needed my, December 6th. Looking at numbers all day, there would be terrible.
Okay, I think we'll get started. A little after 8:30. So, we're talking today about the 2020 Wallingford Township budget. You have two main packets in front of you. The most updated draft of the budget. That's this guy right here. Then you have all our recap information. It's a larger paper right here. So those are the two main documents that we're going to use today. And also, we've updated the, right at the wall there, we've updated the trend for the timeline. And we put all the major categories and reforms and changes for the township,
Gotcha.
pretty much up to present day. So maybe at break time, take a look at that, just to see what's been done throughout the years. So I'm gonna look at the big guide first, the big piece of paper. Okay, so 2020. So right now, our whole, like we normally say on this first sheet of paper, if you took the whole budget, kind of compress it to one sheet of paper, that's basically what this is. So, it's the highest level, and then as we go into the budget and into this document, we keep drilling down into lower levels of detail, into the weeds, so to speak. But then you'll see on the left-hand column, all the different funds. You have the general fund, the fire fund, police fund, etc. And then the next column is the date, which we've updated everything, and all the changes and everything. You have the revenues and expenses and the net change, projected change as of right now. The next column is unassigned fund balance. That's of the last audit, completed audit, which was 12/31/18. And then to the right of that, a metric that we like to look at, an unassigned fund balance ratio. So, fairly self-explanatory. If you look at the general fund as of now, you have the revenues and the expenses. You know, black number there, little to the good, but it's largely pretty tight. Then you have your unassigned fund balance, and then a ratio 37% for the general fund. That's relatively, that's a positive amount. Anywhere 25 to 35 is a solid place to be. 10 to 15 is considered low, acceptable, but still on the low side. And that's why we have one of them highlighted in amber there. It's not red, it's not a dire situation by any means, but it's something that the board should take a look at and focus on today and coming months and years.
The fire department's not putting enough money in it.
Yeah, basically, the fund balance is a little bit low, I'm sure it is, compared to the size of their budget. So I'll just kind of let you scroll through those. And what we do, one thing that we do as well, if you look about halfway down to the left there, combined net position, general, police, and fire. We do that because in Waterford, the police and fire departments, a lot of their funding, some of their funding comes from the general fund transfers. So their financial destinies or situations are interwoven to some degree. So that's why we represent that as a combined number there, general, police, and fire. If you look at that, it's at 136 to the good. Grab my glasses here.
That's what it said.
Yep. Then you have Parks and Rec, of course. Some of these red numbers too, and we'll dive into this more as the days, as the time, as the hours roll on here, are based on some projects, capital projects. So that's one thing we like to look at, whether it's what's deriving a red number. Is it a one-time project, a capital project in nature, where we're drawing upon fund balance, or are we? Is it more of a structural issue? And that's something that we'd be more concerned about. So by and large, we have projects going on to try to confront deferred maintenance. The township deferred a lot of maintenance during the last recession, and some from the smaller one before that. So a lot of catch-up work to do. That's one of the reoccurring themes you'll hear from department heads as we go throughout the day. The improvement revolving fund, that's really an offshoot of the general fund. That's where the township codes its general projects that the general fund is responsible for. One thing to note on that is it has no dedicated revenue stream. It's dependent upon the general fund for transfers in. So that's a kind of a footnote or an asterisk they have by that guy. The budget stabilization fund, that's not an operational fund. That's a set aside. Many people consider that a rainy day fund, but that's something that the board started in 2013. And at the end of the year, we put some deposits in that fund, which now it's about $2 million. Whenever we're rated by the bond rating agencies, they take note of that. They like that. It shows pre-planning. It shows the ability to weather a storm. It gives the board flexibility should be confronted with tough times or another recession or something comes up. We have a pivot point could buy time at least. Then you have a very large water sewer enterprise fund here at the township. And you can see its position there for 2020. Larger fund balance typically in that fund because the projects and the items that are, as you've seen with the memos that come before you, measured in the hundreds of thousands and millions is not, it's commonplace. It's just huge. And a lot of activity on the sewer side, as you're aware of too, township being part of the Old Clinton Sewer District, the OMI, which involves Oakland and Macomb County, and then takes a turn and heads towards what's the Detroit system now, Great Lakes. A lot of deferred maintenance along that whole section. Waterford pays its share. It's projected out for all the communities, the amount of flow, it's metered and everything. But it's done. It's pretty daunting. It's been a lot of deferred maintenance, I guess, is the overall thing. And it's starting to get addressed, but that comes at a price. So this is the recap. I guess what we like you to do on this is you're going to hear things throughout the days and throughout the time coming in. I always harken back to this. This is what makes it hard. This is kind of like put you sort of in a box, what kind of a flexibility. There's always going to be another project, another staffer, another idea that's relevant and good, but how do we fund it? How do we sustain it? That's why we work so hard on this one, just to make things, try to frame it. It's really, it's turning the radar on. I think that's the way I look at it.
Sustainability is important. Staffing, you have to make sure that there's funding available going forward to sustain a position. You don't want to start a position and then in theory have to lay that person off. So that's why it's easier sometimes to talk about one-time projects because it's one and done and it's not part of next year's budget.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Why is the only red number that's not negative, the 17 million at the very bottom, why is that red then?
That's a mistake.
Mistake.
Thank you.
It's formatting.
Yeah.
We're good to go then.
We needed one more chair next to my desk. That's right. I have two, and I always thought that's good. But Gary will come in.
So is that supposed to be black or is that supposed to be
It should
negative?
black.
No, it's just supposed to
That's
be
the
black.
cash
Thanks.
position. of the budget.
I'm not slotting it.
I marked mine in blue so I can still read it, so
We're good to go.
it's a plus.
In the business, we call that a mistake. So it does still say draft at the top.
Revision
so-
in-
Understood. We're good.
No, I'm good with that, thank you. And if you have anything else, yeah, I mean, we're not,
There's a lot that goes into it, and even though you look at it again, then you change a number and other numbers should have been changed and.
if that was red, we would be calling the state of Michigan.
Right.
Yeah, no, I tend to go right to the bottom line,
Sure.
okay? And it was like, wait a minute, okay, it's red, does that mean it's negative?
Yeah,
What do you have?
And then I saw all the others that were negative, and I was like, okay, something's different about that.
That should be black.
Hey
We're
Derek,
good.
Yes, sir.
does this TV work? I'm just,
I don't have
my
that.
reason I suggested, could that timeline be scanned and put on the screen so
It's
it's large
electronic,
for everybody to read it?
We would have to have Vizio, it's a special program, we'd have to have Vizio on that computer, but I like that suggestion. I don't know if we can do it today, but.
I mean, yeah,
It's a good
I'm
idea.
saying maybe in the future, because this will be rather hard to read from here.
Sure, yeah, I like that idea. I do. So you kind of see the cash position there, you see the percent of fund balance, pretty straightforward, I guess, if there's not any questions on that.
Does this note here at the bottom seem Oakland County?
You see that top black number there, Art?
Sorry?
The top black number above the one that was red?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, go left, subtract that red number, then go down, subtract the other red number, and that gives you your bottom number.
the,
right
the one, the 352 at the very bottom.
Bingo,
right?
yep, exactly.
From this year.
Yeah, seven, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, we were
You take,
projected.
you take the top white number, take the two reds off, and that gives
Yep.
you the 17,383.
All good.
And again, I guess that's a positive number, yep.
I should say too, one of the things that Barbara and I are working on, like, once we get through with the budget, we'll still be working on the budget, there's a lot that goes into this document, and analytical stuff goes at the front of it and whatnot, but we're trying to project where we think 19 is gonna land, we're working on that right now. And then we'll have some adjustments for the board that, we'll usually do those the same night as the budget, you know, ratification, so. And that's a lot of,
It's
a lot of stuff going into
projection,
that.
so, yeah, you wanna be conservative, that you don't overestimate where revenues are gonna land, or underestimate an expense.
Sure.
And certain big expenses are still coming through at the end of the year.
Some things aren't
So
normal
this-
throughout the year, they're
Mhm.
spike.
This note here, we've already paid, or we're already approved to pay for cash.
Yeah.
For
At the
one,
bottom.
For
one
one
of
of
the
them.
elements, the current element of which, and even in that project, there's two more pieces
Yeah.
to it that will be coming shortly, within the next year to 2 years.
That was really-
Probably, so that's why it's always a lot of, and after that, they have a whole schedule of water and sewer OMI type projects related to it.
So what OMI did on that one that the board just paid cash for was a long-term lease to buy those assets from Great Lakes, because they felt like, and I think they're right, their bond rating was better, they can finance it with better terms. So they had to negotiate that and work it out, like, we don't want you to buy it for good, okay, but we'll buy it for whatever it was, 99 years, and then do the construction and the rehab, and then better,
So that first piece is buying that lease, then there's two more that they're going to
Yes.
work on for
the northeast pump station and some relining.
construction or reconstruction, and I think
It's only the
those were.
beginning.
Yeah, I think those were a
That's right.
total of 100 million, buying it was like maybe 20 million, and then there's the 40 million coming through, and then another 40 million coming through, of which ours is usually around 11 to 13%.
Oh my,
Yeah, it just depends on what piece of it, but usually we're a good sizable piece. So we expect a few more.
The- They're a double A credit, right? Aren't they? Water and sewer?
Oh my, well, the township is double A,
Right,
Oakland County's triple A, oh my, I think is 2,
triple A?
I believe so. Do you know,
What
Margaret?
are they
Oh
looking
my,
for?
I think
Finance
so,
the thing, all rates are low.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Lower
then
are,
I don't know.
they are.
traditionally, I think
I don't know.
water and sewer has been able to get good rates.
No, I-
Yeah, compared to, like you said, the market. We're-
That's all down, I'd call that downstream stuff, and when Russ comes in, we'll talk to him about the SAW grant and the analysis that was done in Waterford's system, and probably some rate support that's gonna need to happen on that to rehabilitate some of Waterford's assets too, so. So it's just like a bunch of pieces, who owns what?
Who owns what, you know, Great Lakes Water, OMI.
Nothing like infrastructure.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, it's all underground, you know?
And one
Nobody-
incident.
you don't really
Out of
takes a
sight.
lot of minutes.
Out of sight,
Out
out
of
of mind, right, out of sight, out of
Until you
mind.
have a problem, and then it's
Yep.
usually a big dollar sign.
Mhm.
So
Not
that's
out of
always
sight
water
anymore,
and
then.
sewer.
Just Waterford stuff, I think we calculated was it here to Lexington, Kentucky, it's working with Reach. You know, if you just took it all and just made a straight line rather than all that, you know, so.
Wow.
For water and sewer, both, yeah, both those, so. That's just the lines, not the plants and the roads. So, yeah, there's a lot to it. So, by and large, that's the, I'll call it the radar screen or the flash report. The next two, next 3 sheets, if we could skip over those for the time being and come back to that, that's where a lot of discretion comes in and recommendations and stuff. Definitely important, we want to cover it, just want to hit these other things first. Yeah, I'll draw your attention to that picture real quick. There's one thing that is included in the budget, the, redoing that road, that north section of the Township Boulevard next to the middle school. So, that is when we get to the improvement revolving fund,
one of its bigger projects for the year.
Think about that. The next one is a proposal to look at, the township's already looked at, or already completed with its streetlight conversion project for the main corridors, the commercial corridors. The township pays the bills directly, the Dixie and M59 Elizabeth Lake Road, those guys. This would be the first phase of rolling that project out into the neighborhoods. And I think DTE figured out to be like a 1-year ROI, so the thought would be to do this neighborhood and then lower their streetlight assessment. So it's an option, it's something that the board can consider. We think it's a pretty good business case to be made for it, and try to make everything look consistent over a number of years.
When it's a 1-year wash, definitely.
The next sheet is the recap of all the vehicles that are proposed as of right now. On the public safety side, it's the SAD portion of that that's made that possible. When the department heads come in, you can kind of think of this page, and we can talk more about the vehicles. Come in and approach us. Okay, the next sheet is still the largest revenue component for the township is its millage revenue. You can see we've trended that back to about 2008. The yellow, ones that are yellowed on the far right are budgeted, estimated. They're not finalized yet. Of course, this year, 19 and 20, we have that budgeted and estimated out. This is a category, as far as like being close to our estimate, that we feel like we've locked it down. We're really, really close. We've instituted a program where we budget for like 99 or 99.5% of what we should collect, and that is just drawn us very close to what we actually see. The graph, I think, the next page of the graph kind of tells the story too. So despite the elevations, like for 19 and 20, that was made largely due by the public safety SAD. There was a Parks and Rec millage back in 15 that allowed that little blip to start going up there too. So largely it's been proposals that have driven that up. The Headley Amendment, caps us at our, what our capture rate is in Waterford's a mature community. We don't have a gigantic amount of new construction. We have rebuilds and some new construction, but it's, this would look different for a community that had like half of its land undeveloped and stuff like that. The natural state of development and growth would drive this system a lot more for them.
Yes, and always the concern is that with Headley, during an economic downturn, our revenues can go down larger than the rate of inflation, or 5%. And the legislature has not corrected that yet, so that's a very large concern. If they would put something in place at the state of Michigan level to kind of slow that slide. Again, a reduction would be appropriate if property values are fallen, but when in 2 to 3 years, when you start declining 30%, it's very, very difficult to manage a budget.
We need some downside protection.
Yes.
I would imagine a typical community at this point probably would have saw that downturn, and they probably would have had more of a straight line up as they developed more houses and got more tax, because those would all be taxed at the current level.
Right, and so
Yeah,
for
it
growing
wouldn't have had that flat line and then only moving out, it would have been more like.
Yeah, because
like
your
that kind of a
development,
thing.
new development's on caps,
Sure.
exactly.
Yep.
We're getting more experience on that, plus the turnover and the houses reselling stuff coming on caps, so it's spiky, but not like a less developed community like
We
that.
need all our neighbors to just swap houses.
They're doing some of that, it's not enough.
So that's another solution, but again, at the legislation level, no, they will acknowledge it, but they don't
Either
like
side of
to
the
touch
aisle.
it,
No,
and
right.
that's a big concern.
History is set to repeat itself if that should happen again, which is
Yep.
always a bummer.
Yeah.
Next category,
Speaking of the state,
not to be outdone. Here they come again.
SRS, here we go.
Yeah. So here's your revenue sharing trend. I'd like to go back to at least '01 on that one to show you basically the declines that have happened. There's been some modest recovery there, but yeah, you control that for inflation. What we would look to get in 20 would be like 11 million or something like that.
Did I hear we were going to get an increase in this?
There is one, it's modest. Yeah, it's a little one. Part of it's constitutional, so there's really nothing the state can do on that.
Right.
So they take credit for that from time to time.
But again, that's based on
Sales tax
Yeah.
and economic, activity.
And that's why sometimes you get these two-edged swords where when the economy starts going down, it's just not one item that starts to go down, it's multiple.
Right, that's why it goes backward, Joe.
Definitely. But it's the statutory part, the part that in their budget process that's been reduced through the years as their priorities have confronted them and stuff. I think I read, was it the state treasurer said not too long ago, they were at a 20-year-old revenue position?
Oh, yes,
The state of Michigan. So part of it is, yeah, they have a revenue issue themselves.
From the revenue standpoint, it was 20 years.
Yeah,
Really?
really 20 years. The recession hit Michigan as hard as any state in the union, probably.
Harder, probably.
Yes.
I would say on the harder side.
Yeah.
I would say so too.
Then the next sheet is just a graph with some information. You can see it's still not where it was, years ago, 20 years ago. I do send these out to our state reps like annually. It's like a rite of passage. I'll send them an email. It's like deer hunting season, first day. I'll send this out, and then we'll take bets on if I hear anything back. This is that salvo.
Even if it's
Did you ever
just
send a
like,
follow-up? Did you get my last email?
No, I've kind of given up on that. Said I know it's a toughie, but here it is.
You need to send a teaser like Geico does to make you like tune in, some goofy mean voice.
That's true. Maybe they think it's fishing and they don't.
Yeah.
Security, no. No, it would help. So we'll have to keep our fingers crossed on that. Next column, or next page is interest revenue. So this is strictly funds that are invested by the treasurer in conservative investments, Public Act 20 investments primarily at Oakland County, is my understanding, in their own government pool. And you can see the changes through the years. So another thing that happened, during the recession is we started losing interest revenue, which is a lesson from history. If it starts to grow back, do we put more in contingency or do projects or something to offset that? Because you don't want to grow too much on this revenue model, on this stream, because you can't count on it forever. So it has a real cyclical nature to it. But we're a little low on 19. We're going to come in a little better than that. So that's
Yeah,
why
there's
20.
quite a difference between 19 and 20.
It was a conservative estimate. That one.
Jump to 18 now.
yeah.
These rates, that's what happens when the Fed raises rates versus when the Fed lowers.
Because there was a long period of time where the rates were so very low that we were earning like very little interest. And even right now, it's difficult to earn much interest.
Could be worse, there's a lot of countries where it's a negative.
Yes, that is true.
What concept?
Yes. Well familiar with that one.
The next page, tax roll adjustments, that happens through, call it the backside of the assessing process. People get their assessments and their tax bills, they can, it's their mechanism to come in and, fight that more or less. And that happened a lot during the housing devaluation. So not only were we losing revenue at that time, we were getting expenses that were hitting us a lot harder too. So we don't expect, for example, 2020, we don't expect us to get 100,000 in tax tribunal cases based on recent history here, or 19 to come in at that number for that matter. But We don't like to remove that because it's a little bit of a safeguard and a buffer if things start to turn and we start to get calls from across, I'll say across the street because I work in a different building, but, you know, if these are coming in, what's gonna happen? Like, well, we gotta have a little safeguard in there, otherwise,
And
flat-footed, don't have a place to put
And if
it.
it comes to one large commercial building, that gets pretty hard too. Sum total of a lot of small building, residential, or one large, so that's why
Yeah.
we like that buffer in there.
Yeah, that graph really kind of dictates what happens during the evaluation period, so, yeah, people lined up, you know, for those cases. So to set that to 0 or some minimal amount, I just don't think that would be prudent, so.
Graphically, that's some amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did anybody not come in and challenge?
I don't
No,
know,
I-
a few
I
times I was
wonder-
over there streaming in, you know, looking for that.
The one year was like 400 and some thousand.
Yeah.
Yeah,
A couple.
yeah,
Yeah, year after year.
3 years average, 4,000 easy, or 400. easy.
yeah.
And yeah, between like 2009 and 2010, they didn't expect it to go up that much. And then from 10 to 11, it doubled beyond that. And it's so quick to happen that you don't kind of see it coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, so losing 20 or whatever it was, 25 or 30% of our revenues, and then have these categories start to hit too.
That's excellent.
It was just, it was
A
hard.
perfect storm.
Yeah. So here's a category, after all that fun, it actually has worked out, I think, fairly well for the township. It's general liability, carrier MMRMA. Basically, the costs have been held pretty constant through the years. And if you skip down to the second half there, they've returned money in form of net asset distribution to the township. So it's a refund, essentially. So if you pay $1 million and get 700 grand back, I mean, that's pretty good. And what we've elected to do, the supervisors recommended as well, to not budget these numbers into the budget, because they can stop. They're nothing that we're entitled to, it's been good fortune. Again, we'll try to pick that up when we do our year-end adjustments and reallocate it. Probably put some into improvement revolving, you know.
Some of it
advise
goes
that.
back to water and sewer because they pay the lion's share of that insurance too.
Just not allocated to everyday expenses, because next year, like I said, it might not be there, and you need it to be everyday expenses, but like I said, put an improvement revolving fund for special projects, stuff like that.
The insurance companies giving rebates like that doesn't necessarily just depend on us, that depends on everything the insurance company's got going on.
Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah,
their
so I mean,
losses.
it doesn't make any sense to count that as revenue.
No, their losses.
Bonus.
Yeah, it's nice, it's a
Bonus,
bonus.
so every time you look at it, and just say, this
When
is
it
a,
happens.
this is a
Because like you
one-time deal, and if it comes again, it does, and
Yeah.
it doesn't, it doesn't, but it's
Yeah.
just.
Yeah, I mean, it's more in recent time has been received, I mean, that usually didn't happen
Right.
in the past. The amount of their investment earnings based on the amount that they wanna have as a cash reserve, you know, they do that analysis, and then, but the township's been a part of MMRMA for my whole career, I don't know. when
Is it
started.
MMR?
Yeah, man.
MMRMA, yeah, Michigan Municipal Risk Management Association. So it's a pool.
It's a municipal.
Mark is our risk manager for the township. We have a lot of training too, a lot of resources that the township has taken advantage of and can take advantage of, so it's been a pretty good relationship.
Because of our long-term relationship with them, we're given all the advantages of, in their calculations for their rebates, it's based on longevity, some of it, and so that's why we receive those.
What's a nice chunk of change to get back?
And I've been here for less than a year, and working with the MMRMA has been great. They're a really good organization to work with. Compared to where I came from, this has been really great.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you can't think of too many things you get 70% rebate on. I mean, that's, you know.
Well, in 4 of the last 9 years, we got over 7.
Yeah, those are big numbers, I mean, there's no doubt about that, that's.
Wonderful.
That's a major savings.
It's stuff
Great
we
windfall.
should be able to do, that we
That's
haven't been able to do without.
That's
it.
really what's making the improvements in the improvement revolving fund possible, right? Is this,
Yeah, which is
So
great.
one-time
I mean, there's nothing
revenue.
wrong with that.
no,
And most of the years in which we budget for the revolving improvement fund, a transfer is made in at the beginning of the year, but it does not cover the projects that are anticipated. So even like this year, I think we're around the 700,000 mark, and yet there's over $1 million in expenses. So again, if we do get the rebate, then a transfer will probably be made into the revolving improvement fund to close that gap before the end of the year. And again, next year starts a little off with the projects exceeding the revenues. And you take a look at this category at the end of the year, or any other category, but this is.
Yeah, and it seems like when, you know, on our monthly, bi-monthly meetings, it seems like every once in a while we'll have a hit where some money comes out of an account, which is, it's nice to have that there, to be able to do that.
Yeah.
You know, that's great. But you can't count on it, no doubt.
Well, the unexpected things pop up, you said it's good to have a rainy day fund, it's different to fund that, and like, so we kind of got out of the financing part of things, to free cash along the way, and it's not a significant amount of money when you look at it, but when you add up all the interest saved over a period of time, it's a lot of money.
That's true.
Yeah, it's like, you know, the meeting you missed, where you prepaid those bonds and saved that interest, it's the same type of thing.
Yep, it is.
Yeah, I mean,
You know,
it's,
yeah,
has to be.
it's just good management.
Yeah, it is.
$40,000 for 6 years by prepaying.
Just
you
good.
know.
It's the way things should be done.
It's nice to be able to do it, for sure.
Yeah, one year we got about 800-some thousand. That was a police and fire.
Yeah,
So we found, you know, we
to
financed
pay them off first, sure.
Yeah.
graph the same information here. Okay, the next two sheets have to do with the pension system for Waterford Township. You have two at the township, one, general employees, and then you have a police and fire. As far as structurally, they work the same way. They're different in size, they're different in their spot in history, I would say. And that being the general employees one, you'll see here first. That was closed in 2005, so when you start to look, to me it's just easier to look at the graph here on the second page. Those contributions are at the top. What the township has to put in every year is determined by the actuary. I would say in that system, it's fair to say that the air is starting to come out of that one. It's been closed for longer. One thing that did happen in 20, so we made a change a few years back. They're basing 20's contribution based on all the information up to 2018. So they can give us a right to the nickel contribution. We don't have to come back at the end of the year. Years ago, the township would have to come back at the end of the year and go, oh, we missed it by, $300,000-400,000. To me, I'd rather not do that, but we don't have to, so change was made to just based on a little bit older information and just carry that through. And that allows our budget to be more accurate and stuff like that. It's a big category, so we can lock it down.
And it's, the contribution is made mid-year now, as long as we can do it anyway.
It's a leveraging item, get that money into play.
The unfunded liability portion.
Start earning money.
Yeah, try to help, going forward, so, but in 20, the contribution between the two systems went up about $500,000 between general and police and fire both. So, a little bit of a hit there, and that was largely because of, if you remember, fourth quarter 18, took that dive.
Yeah. Geez.
Bottomed out, and then it came right back in the next quarter, but it's a snapshot that they use, so that's what they can go off of. Yeah, you can see the funded ratio at the bottom, so these passed the state stress test when it came to the legacy systems. These are, well, you have to be 60% funded in your pension systems, and the township is in both of them. So that's how that one trends out. This is for basically everybody but police and fire, everybody in town hall, water, sewer, library, court. Like I said, closed in 05 to new hires. So that's that one. And then the next one is police and fire. It's a larger system by and large, and it's been closed more recently. In 2012, it was closed to new hires in the fire department. The police department was closed in 15. And, so when you kind of wheel over to the graph, you can kind of see, you haven't seen that downward trend yet. We will in the future, but it just hasn't taken hold as of yet. You see the spike in 20, based on those results, largely from 18. It is a smoothing model that they use, but 18 kind of drove that. And every year that goes by too, it's kind of works like a homework. You have one less year that you're spreading the costs out and financing it over. So at some point, maybe the pension board would look at changing their amortization schedule. Get to that, take it to, I don't know if it makes sense to take it to a 0, or something like that, or a 5 or 10, kind of normalize it out. That would help.
Because again, the downward or the upward trends are kind of spread over, about 4 years. So if you went all the way down to 0 and had no schedule, and all of a sudden you needed to make a contribution, the township would be required to do nothing, and then maybe several million. And that wouldn't fare very well, because when's that going to happen? More likely than not in an economic downturn. So again, if you can maybe come into the 5-year range or something, we haven't quite made it to that point yet, but again, when we approach that, and I think the general employees is closer to that point than the police and fire. But when we get there, the pension board may have that discussion to say, okay, we wanna always keep maybe at figuring out what's due over 4 or 5 years. And then have a smaller contribution and less of a spike.
Okay, so the next page has to do with retiree health care. Known as OPEB, 2 other post-employment benefits. So these are employees that are covered by the township's sponsored retiree health care program. There are no new hires that are hired presently that are covered by that. That has been closed, one of the reforms that have been made. You can see the contribution in 20, it's just about the same that was made in 2019, it's just a smidge higher. The corrective action plan does require that be, the board committed to putting $1 million in for 20, so we superseded that. But it's needed. If you look at the lower left too, you can see the trust assets. There was a trust that was created for this in 2008. And then there's an actuarial study that's done every 2 years, and that derives the unfunded liability number based on their assumptions. And then you can see the percent funded, 9.10%. That's up from years past, but still well below the state's level of 40, their threshold. And consequently, the board had to submit a corrective action plan and has to follow that going forward. We're gonna talk a little bit more about that. No, actually, we're gonna come back to that, but we do wanna come back to this topic. You can see the contributions on the next page there too. So again, during the economic downturn, if you've lost 25–30% of your revenue, you're getting the tax tribunals coming in, there's layoffs occurring, panic basically. You're not putting money away for retiree health care because you're trying to survive, so that worked against us now.
And again, pensions, there is a requirement to make the contribution, the annual contribution to pension systems. There was not the same for retiree health care, and that was one of the things, and a lot of communities were doing pay-as-you-go. There was a small number of retirees, and the price of health care for them was low, so they pay as you go. And that's traditionally how many municipalities did it. And now, all of a sudden, in the economic downturn, they're now putting away money, and it wasn't an area in which they could contribute.
And kudos to Jerry Compar too, when we sent this corrective action plan, the state got adopted the first time too, so they did the due
Absolutely.
diligence.
Great
Went
job
over
with
that,
that.
and make it happen,
Good
and
job.
there was a lot of them got sent back, some got sent back 2 or 3 times before they got straightened out. But they came up with realistic numbers that we could do, we looked.
I was gonna say,
I mean,
there's a
if the
lot of
economy
people who
isn't
work on
turned
that.
10 years out, we could look out 10 years and, okay, but beyond that, you need a crystal ball. But initially, we looked at thinking, man, 1 or 2 years, where are we gonna be? But as we worked on the numbers, and I tell you, they did a wonderful job, a good job, gang.
Thank you.
As usual.
Looks like we're throwing twice as much money as we committed to, right?
Yeah, for
Yes.
one for 20, yeah.
At least, yeah, so I mean, that's,
Because again, the premise is if we have a little
Sure.
extra, put it in,
You
but
got it.
over time, it will earn interest in that type of, a higher earning investment account.
The numbers, it's still large, but it is getting smaller, so that's a good thing, so.
Probably look to put a little bit more in at the end of this year too, with our calculations and stuff. That's one of the ideas. Compound interest is a great friend, but you need time.
Right.
For that. Pointing out the obvious,
The
but.
more time, the more compounds, the better it is, yes.
Right.
need interest too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As well, and a good
Yeah,
reason.
it's helpful.
Cross our fingers.
1.5% on the bill isn't gonna get you.
That's what they come
Yeah. But yeah, the township, the actuary, Plant Moran, our auditors, there's a lot of people that have
A
pulled
lot of
into
people,
that.
yeah, who worked on
The
that.
healthcare consultants, so it's a big,
But the good thing about it, you pull them in, you listen to them, that's, because a lot of times people pull them in and they just say, well, that won't work, and they go elsewhere, and it just, it can get ugly in a hurry, so.
oh, yes, definitely. That's that one. So the next one is related. This is retiree healthcare. There's kind of two sides to retiree healthcare. There's the trust, that's paying for the liabilities that you're accruing and trying to make up for your past position. And then there's the pay-as-you-go. Like Barb said, the state constitution requires has always required a contribution for the pension funds. It didn't have that same requirement for retiree healthcare. So most communities didn't set anything aside. So this is the pay-as-you-go side. So that's about 5.6 million for 2020 is what we're estimating. We're, again, a little bit high and a little conservative in 2019. So that's why that's adjusted down a little bit. A lot of things happen in there. It's hard because there's people that are eligible to retire that may or may not retire. There's people that are going on the system and no longer work here. There's, some are single, some are families. So there's like coming up with getting this one locked down is difficult with that. So you trend it out and you try to come up with your best guess and factor some of those things in. The next sheet is the graph there. And that will continue to grow. There's no question about that. That is, as a guarantee. You do a trend line through all of those. It goes a little bit of peaks and valleys and stuff there, but it will continue to grow. More people will be added to this system. Until at some point it levels out and trails off, but that's
What
a
is
few decades.
what is in 2020 were changed to fully insured?
It was a change that was implemented with our healthcare consultants. And
For one portion of health insurance, whether it's retirees or regular employees, we were self-insured. So that meant there was a certain level that the township had to take responsibility for.
Right.
And now it was to our advantage to become fully insured for this period of time. So that did save us money. That's unusual, but, so that's why we jumped on that opportunity for the time being. In a year or two, it may become advantageous to go back to being self-insured. So then in turn, basically, we pay all the bills as they come in.
Right,
Through administrator.
right. That's what we're planning to do for 2020, it sounds like.
No, we're fully insured.
Fully insured.
Yes.
Okay, and the next sheet, this is the healthcare for current employees. So a reform was done on this in Lansing, Public Act, I think it was 152, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So what that said was the township, municipalities had three choices. The township, Waterford Township opted to take the most conservative one, which is the shorthand on it, it's known as the hard cap. basically, if you look at the lower left, that grid down there, it says that you cannot increase your, basically it sets limits on the amount for all the different categories that you can pay for an employee, whether it's single, double, or a family program. And it bases those increases every year, they index them on a medical CPI. So this saved the township, first year, I remember we did a calc when it went in, it was $1 million. So you've had those savings and cost containment as you've gone on. So as scary as the retiree healthcare one is, and it is, this one I think there's been savings that have been garnered, there's been cost containment that's happened. People don't have the same healthcare today that they did a few years ago, rightly so, financial standing of municipalities. But that's kind of what has happened with this category. When you look at the, I know it's hard, there's a lot of lines and stuff going on there, but the estimated healthcare cost per employee, I guess I didn't calculate that one out for 18, I should have. But you can see that it's pretty stable. It's been very stable. So what we do when Bonnie sends out her sheets, because we have like an August open enrollment, we have like the first part of the year, the second part of the year, and that second part of the year we tell her, add 3% to that, because that's how it's trending out, and it's locked it in pretty good, so.
And it's made the township have to work with the insurance companies to
Yes.
provide us,
Shopping.
yeah, a good product for employees, but the township is paying for it, and, you know, if they choose a higher type plan with more benefits, then they bear that cost, you know. But there's also, I believe, programs that are available to employees for little or no cost, because it will keep them right at that maximum amount that we're allowed. And so I think HR has done a very good job of working with the insurance people, and Bonnie also works with them to provide that for the employees.
Next sheet's just a graph of that. Some of that spike that you see there is because the township in 2012 took on more employees with Pontiac. So it doesn't really tell the whole story there. That's why that line before, when you look at the cost per full-time equivalent, I think is really more telling. That's how that works. I think we were gonna spin back to the retiree healthcare one real quick, the OPEB category. I brought in a specialist to talk to you about that today.
We're redistributing, yeah, he's just letting me talk on it rather than him. But,
Oh, we're gonna take one.
she was, that needs to stay in the middle. Oh, here's one for you, if you want
Margaret needs one. Did you get one? Yeah.
No, I
We're passing it around.
But once again, retiree healthcare has been traditionally on a pay-as-you-go basis, where again, there was a low number of retirees and the cost to provide insurance was relatively low. And then as you go forward, there's more retirees and the cost starts to go up, and we're looking towards the future, and again, people are entitled to this benefit, so there's going to be more people that we need to provide this for. And that's why it's the state and was starting to focus in on this and saying, we're looking to the future and we're not seeing the picture, so you need to start working on it now. And at the accounting standard level, I would say in 2010, they started looking at putting it into the actuarial reports and really, and then into the audit report. So finally now, in 2018, we have I think if you remember when the auditors here, they said that your fund balance numbers on one of the bases, which included this, looked a lot different than it had in the past, because they are starting to look at that big liability as it projected forward. And again, at the state level, they said you need to be at least 40% funded for your retiree health care. And when we did the analysis, we were way below that. So the conclusion of this whole thing, and it's going to be our focal point, is number one is if we can have the opportunity to put more revenue into that fund, so that down the road, it's available if the township needs it, if and when, well, it definitely need it, but when it needs it, there will be at least some amount of money there. So the more that we put in, a little at a time, and then the flip side is expenses. That is the premise of all of this. You have to look at revenue going in and make more contributions. And whenever you can, you have to take a good look at what kind of benefit you can provide to retirees, and at the same time contain those costs. Currently, on the pay-as-you-go system, we usually do around a 45% to 50% pay-as-you-go. So that is considered a contribution. At the same time, when we look at the determined contribution, it's usually about 50 to 55% higher. So if we pay $5.5 million in retiree healthcare costs, we actually should be putting another $5.5 million into the trust for the future. And so we're covering the 5.5 to provide the benefit, but whenever we can, we have to start inching up. So if you take a look at this year, we achieved a $2 million level, which is one of our absolute highest levels. We really should be doing $5.5 million. So we still have a $3 million gap. So again, as we go forward, it's just that constant, put your foot on the gas, don't let it up. We need to put money into this category when we are able to, and always continue to look at the expense that it is. So each year I can envision that we will be working with the insurance providers, with HR and payroll, and they will take a look at trying to determine the best products at an affordable price to keep that promise, and at the same time, when we can, and hopefully this will get us where we need to be. So this will be a recurring topic every budget year and in between. And so we appreciate, that line of thought, that you lend the support to these concepts, to help in the long run. It's not just, you're sitting on the board now, but a future board is gonna have to continue to address this issue. And again, this is the corrective action plan that's been filed, and there periodically, we will be required to report in, or they'll monitor it. And we'll work with them, to make sure that we're doing, and that's why we felt it was very important, yes, we committed to a $1 million, contribution in the 2020 budget year, but looking at all factors, it's that time where if there's a little bit extra, we need to put that extra amount in, keep it going forward if we can. And again, we appreciate the support by the board in this line of thought as times go forward. It's gonna be important.
It's really important.
It is, because again, that's what we're going through, is a little more revenue, watch the expenses, and hopefully be able to provide those benefits for the future. Because some of these people, the system just closed, in 2019, you have people who will work here 25 to 30 years. At that point, their benefit starts to kick in. Other people's benefit will have, they will have diminished, but there's still a future group of people that will be entitled to this benefit. And their time starts in 25 years, so that's why you have to be mindful. This is a long term.
This is the single largest tough financial issue for Waterford Township, bar none.
Yes.
So what I'm probably gonna say a little less politely than what Barb just said is, this is where we need your help. It's above our pay grade. If there's anything you're gonna focus on after the 2 days of what you're hearing today, it's this. I would encourage you to talk to your supervisor. Your treasurer has been involved with this through the years, very knowledgeable on that topic. But we need the board's support. It's, the study has been, this is a good study. I know it's a boring read and all that kind of stuff, but it's worth your time. If you look at the scenarios that have been run, like on the back, scenario, they have a baseline and they have a scenario 2 and stuff like that.
The alternate,
Yeah, so if you look at like the 2019 dollars, so like Barb mentioned, we're using, it's close to 6 million. And, you know, they're a little high here, so and this will get adjusted throughout. We'll have them run another
What page
one.
are you on?
I'm sorry. It says page 3, it's probably 3/4 of the way
So
back.
scenario one
Scenario
baseline.
one baseline.
Yeah.
It's the first one, it's from GRS in the lower left.
Yep.
So,
We will reach that 40% in 2040.
40.
if we do a lot of changes in work to get us
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
It's not, we're not on a program to get
No,
there.
No, we're not.
No,
It's kind of, I think of like a plane, you know, we work kind of like this, or we're kind of like this, but we need to get like that, so.
yeah.
And no, that's easy to
Get flat first and then start.
Yes.
So, and again, if you look at that timeline and stuff that we have up there, it's not like nothing has been done. There's been lots of reforms and lots of changes, and even this budget includes, you know, more into the trust than we thought we could do. Some good things.
The trust was formed in 2008 too.
Right, yeah. But if you look at the, like, 2019 dollars there, to me, I had to add that column just to put it in context. If we're paying 6 million now, roughly, we have 2 million in the trust. So if we started to back off the trust to pay the current benefits, and then you get out there 3, 4, get 10 years or so, we're starting to get to a point where unsustainability starts to become a real relevant term. So
And that's where I think.
it's
the
easy for us to
second-
say, we need more revenues, we need expenses cut, because every one of those involves some pain and involves political will. And we, you know, that's, but yeah, if we can leave you with anything today that we need you to do or need your help on, it's this. And it's tough, it's a tough one, you can call it sins of the father or
Yeah,
all
since
that.
the past.
It is,
But
because it's traditionally how things were, everybody was viewing it in the same person, not
Waterford's no
just
different.
Waterford, it was the
No.
state, it's the federal level, that it's a promise and nobody dollarized it. And then they started realizing that it was a bigger commitment than people realized because of these factors.
The
And
healthcare
that-
industry's changed dramatically, what they can do now, what's available, never used to be available a generation or two ago, you know, so lots of changes.
People live longer, you know, so you have to provide that benefit for a longer time period. And so there's a lot of factors that have gone into it, and again, that's why they kind of started to focus on it.
For sustainability, this is something that, you know, we need to address, but having said that, even 40% when you think about it is not.
It's not,
That's true,
it's
we're
not
really-
passing in
really
most, in most
It's not
cases.
passing, no.
Even at 40% funded, there would still continue to be a commitment for the township to pay
Yeah.
part of the benefit and then possibly to take part of the benefit out of the trust fund, but you would still have to be, you know, the ideal was it would be at 100% funded, all of the benefit comes out of the trust fund. And this is not going to be happening, but again, it's kind of that happy medium where at least part of the benefit can come out of the trust fund and part of the expense would be paid by the township to provide this promise.
So one of the first, when they were kicking this around in Lansing, one of the first things, and it sounds really good, one of the first things that came, like an offer that was thrown on the table was, we'll make everybody pay the annual required contribution that they're accruing every year. They can do that, so they're not like driving themselves deeper into debt. Well, if we're supposed to pay 6 and we're putting in 2, where do we grab the 4, guys? I mean,
I hear you.
we would be laying off public safety left and right, you know, we just grounded them and just, I don't know what else you could do. The magnitude would be that huge where,
Of course, you're 1/3, 2/3, what it is, you know, for every 1/3 you pay, you're going 2/3 rather than that, so.
so that's where they started from, they came up with 40, I mean, they're trying to.
Right, they're trying to address it.
Yeah.
They're trying
Try
to,
to create a
but it
realistic
wasn't
number
real.
that's achievable.
Right.
Yeah.
But what they did do is say after, and I always forget the date, but after such and such date, you have to pay the full benefits for that employee. So what they were saying is you need to close your plans. So,
If you're not, yeah.
and Waterford has.
Well,
Waterford
yes.
has done that, so.
But again, it's gonna be a while before we get to that point. And when we first started dealing with Gabriel Road, I love to work with numbers, when we first started dealing with Gabriel Road, they would show the charts, well, we weren't getting anything out of it, nothing. And Derek is, he almost as animated as I do at times, it's just like, enough is enough, so just for fun, I took and ran charts out through the last person that will go on the old system, took until they were 95 years old, and that took me to 2092. That was fun, it was a long process. I'm gonna tell you right now,
Holy man.
you don't wanna see those numbers. You don't, I know I don't need a stress test because my arteries open and not like, they're just like, they're pushing $1 billion.
Wow.
They're pushing $1 billion. When you go out, again, now eventually it takes a turn and it starts to go down, but you're thinking, and this is projecting, people coming in, people going out, and eventually, nobody else is coming in, everyone's going up, but is it, you know, these are all projections, is all they are, they're projections, they could be good, they could be bad, so I did 5 different scenarios, and they were all within, you know, 0.5% to 1.5% of each other, depending how you put numbers in and projected the value of the dollar, and you know, today's dollar compared to the dollar. It's all guesstimates, but again, 10 years out, that was good, other than that, but that's before we get the charts we gave you running, but then when we got it back, I'm gonna compare them, and just, numbers were close, but they're astounding numbers, they're scary.
And yet at the same time, the real point of this is we need to run the day-to-day operations, and those are, they have things that need to be addressed, whether it's staffing or, projects or whatever, so that's, you know, the top layer of what we're looking at, and in the background, this is an important second layer that we have to pay attention to.
Yeah, but like I said, it's not gonna go away, it's there and it's there to stay, and it's gonna be there for, like I said, way beyond our life cycle, and that's even if we, unless we live to be Methuselah's age, then I don't think that's gonna happen, so, but.
So, that's some homework for you. A challenge. I guess we can go back to towards the front of this booklet now. I won't burden you with
Yeas and nays?
Yeas and nays, yeses and no. So when the department heads come in the next couple days, this is the first unveiling that they've seen of any of these items. So, just to explain real quick, our color code at the top there, the peach or the orange, that's one-time capital items. The blue, light blue is reoccurring requests. Typically for Waterford, that's gonna be in the form of people, some form or another. And then whatever that next color is, purple or purple, okay.
Purple or gray?
Purple or gray. To be determined, and that's where, you know, Gary spends a ton of time on this. He tries to do his best, and we applaud him for that. But there's points where it's like, and I don't knock him for it. He just said, you know, I want to hear the rest of the board, you know, weigh in on this and just see how they feel, and because I mean, that's what it all comes down to, trying to work together, try to do the best we can with the dollars we have. Again, hearkening back to that front page where it's really not a whole lot extra at this point. Obviously, you can read the descriptions of the amounts, the fund, the operational fund that it'll hit, the departments on the far left there. The line item that we have it coded to, that the little X there, that means that we've entered it into the system if it has, or we've, you know, taken it into account. That's just was our little checklist to make sure that we didn't miss it. So we can.
So, yeah, so all the
See
yeses
all
that
that.
are on this page have been included in the numbers that are on the front page.
Yes,
So
that's a
then,
good way to put it, yeah.
and then any of the no's are to be determined. And there was a couple granting of partial things, you know, they didn't, something, they were given consideration, but maybe not everything that they wanted. Those have been included, again, above and beyond this not. So there were a lot of yeses in the distant past.
Yeah, it's
This page would have been
pretty red.
all no, and 1 or 2 yeses. So again, this is a lot of progress. And then as people come in, they'll, you know, present what they feel is important, and if they have been given a yes, then that's easy. If not, then you have to decide if there's additional consideration and how it will be funded.
If you want me to read through all, you can just kind of absorb it and go through it.
Yeah, there's staffing things and capital, you know, equipment, maybe a building repair or something like that.
Some of it in bold is from the public safety SAD.
That was, yes, in particular with the fire department, because the police department is pretty much doing vehicles for their, the SAD reads that we have to spend at least 0.425 in capital, or not capital, excuse me, equipment, which makes it more specific to vehicles and so forth, rather than other types of items. So that's where, when it comes to the fire department, we try to focus on fire trucks, which is what they really need anyways, and EMS vehicles, and maybe some other types of, maybe a generator or something, because that would be more considered to be, equipment.
Do you have any questions for us?
Just, I had one quick one, and that, you know, on the third page, on the, almost the last line, that's their sewer, increased sewer lining budget. I mean, that's a huge number, 250 to 500K. But would that be something that would potentially save us a lot of money?
Yeah, it's very needed. The only reason that that's a no at this point is because, there's not, this, it's kind of, we're a little bit got the cart ahead of the horse. You put it on here because it's needed, but they just finished that analysis project, the SAW grant. So they've done a bunch of TVing, and there's a lot of reports that are being generated by the engineers and stuff. And then they're gonna come to the board with a revenue, there's gonna be a rate study on the sewer system.
Okay.
And then that rate study would support more of this, because it is needed, and it's a good thing.
So that's the exact point that
Yes.
that's kind of making, is
It's not that we're,
waiting
yeah.
until the
it's not that the
comes out
supervisor's
2 weeks
against it or anything like that.
Yeah, it's just, right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good,
It's
it's
just-
good stuff and highly needed.
And then the only other thing I thought of is, I've heard it mentioned in two specific places. What, and I don't know if this is the right venue or not, but what about potentially, I know a couple of groups have started to look into starting like a nonprofit to apply for more grant money and, you know, I know, for instance, like, we run into that problem with Hess Hathaway all the time. If we were a nonprofit, there's a lot more resources available. And it was mentioned, I did go to that fire ops thing, and they mentioned it there because there's supposedly an enormous amount of untapped money that we can't get. And I don't know whether we can even do that as a township or not.
Yes, I have heard that, yes, that as a grant writing, in grant writing world, to be a nonprofit, to declare yourself a nonprofit, it opens up your organization to a lot more opportunities for grants. And other municipalities are kind of moving in that direction.
I mean, on our ride over to the fire ops thing, Matt was explaining that to us a little bit, and he said there's just so much more money out there that's potentially obtainable as if there was some way to do it as a 501. And he was even, didn't he say he was even talking about, did somebody say there's an organization or something that
He
does
said
it?
that he knows of somebody who's a former firefighter who's kind of doing that as a second career as a grant writer, who became very proficient at it and can say that I can almost, I want
Pay
to,
for himself.
right,
Yeah.
exactly, like there was a fee for doing that, but if you didn't get that amount. in
Yeah,
grant
if he didn't get the
Oh.
money,
it
he
was kind of
gave you a year or two free or something like
Wow.
that, until he started getting the money.
Now, whether there's a downside to declaring yourself that or not, I don't know any of that, but there would be something, maybe
Yeah,
something
I'm
certainly
not
worth
super familiar
investigating.
with that.
I'm not familiar with it. The grants have always been written by, like, John Lyman had
Yep.
been very, very successful through the traditional avenues.
No,
The
I don't know if it's him or
library.
not. No, this is.
No, this one's someone else, I would say,
Right,
because
yes.
John is, I don't, is very proficient, but it was not making a
John,
career.
Somebody else.
But again, it's
Yeah.
how do you take, is it our form as a municipality and actually declaring ourselves to be nonprofit, and what are the pros and cons?
Correct.
Or is it a something else, meaning like, a few years ago, the library was working with, and they were looking at coming as a side thing, not as the main, as a community foundation. Same thing, there's time and effort that goes into it, but what's that form of government and who's running it and what's
Yeah,
that
and-
nuance? Is it just for fire, is it just for library, is it just for Parks and Rec? Can it be a separate, I'm just not
I would
familiar
think
with
that it
it.
would be independent for each department, because it couldn't be dependent on the township.
You know, and so that's
Because
where
we're
you,
not a nonprofit.
so,
Right.
right, so then you have a lot of people who are looking to set that up, and how do you do it? And then I will tell you that with grant administration, with the Safer Grant, there is a huge amount of background.
Oh, there's a ton of
commitment.
work besides just getting it.
So that's how do you
That's where the work
support
starts.
that?
Right.
You know, because there was big payoffs, but at the same time, there was a huge amount of commitment from HR, from payroll, from my staff in order to even get the Safer Grant up and running.
Yep.
So, you know, and I know
Is there-
that some smaller
is there
grants have been
financial-
looked into.
Was there financial pay in it for the safer grant for administrative, was there
No.
administrative? No.
That was very clear that it could pay for certain things, it could not pay for other things. It could pay for the staffing, their benefits, it could not pay for their uniforms, their turnout gear, many things were, and administrative fees were not. Sometimes when you get into administrative fees, even if they are allowed, they're very specific and they actually, how we do the Maximus cost study, you would have to do a separate independent one in order to claim that or do different. So we're just not that far into grants and grant writing and the nuances of grants not set up. But in turn, I think it's definitely worth looking into. If you tap into the right people, they might give you better and easier guidance. This is the form you need to do, and so
Right.
people have taken
Yeah, I
a
don't know.
stab at it in a little, but in
Threw it out
turn,
there, but,
but in turn, I think the real point of this is you never know when you might hit the right person who has the answers for the right person over here, because we've come across that. You start talking about it, and it doesn't happen now, but 3 or 4 years together, all of a sudden you've got the right group of people and it takes off and it works. It takes them some budding attorneys, so it's definitely worth looking into. We haven't heard a lot that would put us down the right path from our side. So if you hear anything with, especially with Parks and Rec, I think they've got,
I was just talking about that same topic in the meeting before I came here today. It's pretty interesting, just a community foundation type thing.
and so there were the basis of a community foundation. I don't know how far.
Yeah,
No, I just don't know how. 'cause
I've
they
been in
came-
the for-profit world for a while.
And we're municipal, and then there's not-for-profit, so there's these different nuances, and
Yeah.
like you said, and I've heard that more recently too, maybe because whomever is promoting it or whatever. So it's kind of getting that right mix to put the topic out there, and as people start hearing about things, it might come together.
We've had a couple of employees go to grant writing school, go to grant writing classes and stuff. Probably in the ideal world, if we had a dedicated grant writer in the township, that would be great, that would write for grants, that's what they did.
I know Allison's really good at it.
But
She went
again,
to the seminar.
Yeah, Parks and Rec, there's a seminar in November.
I understand that, but when you're a full-time department head, you know
Oh,
what
sure,
I'm saying?
sure.
And you have a family and you have a life outside of work, you know what I'm saying? That's why a person that writes grants and writes grants only, that's it. Or you go with a contract person that writes the grants and they get X amount of dollars for writing the grants. I know when I first came into office, we had a person that was writing grants for the township, but then when I looked into it, it was not the way it was supposed to be, and it was proposed to be, or I heard it was, so. But again, how much money they get, and how much money it costs to have them, you know what I'm saying? But if you had an hourly employee that was a grant writer, that was their job, they weren't getting a percentage of the grant where you would, a contract person,
Yep.
they would get, like, whatever the percentage of the grant they get, there's different ways of looking at it, but would it be to our advantage to have a grant writer? I don't know.
Yeah,
Or
I
again, but
don't either.
that form of nonprofit, how do you get it, and how do you set it
Yeah,
up?
how does it
Who's
fit
really-
with the township? I mean, that's the other thing.
And that's where I think it's actually.
It gets fuzzy,
somebody-
there's no doubt,
Yes.
there's gotta be a downside to
Separation.
it.
It has to be
Yeah.
per department.
Yep,
And again, like I said, the basis of a community foundation is somewhere, and it got picked up and set aside. And it wasn't
library.
Joan who was doing it, it was somebody else. So I think she was going to tie into that if she could, and it didn't go
Because
very far.
isn't Friends of the Library a 501? No?
Three's-
Yeah.
They may be.
I'd have to check.
See, that's what you,
Yeah, I
I started
think that
looking.
they are, that they do their own, and when they did those fundraisers, it's completely,
library are.
they are 501c3, so they administrate those funds themselves. It doesn't come to us, does it?
We do.
So when you contribute to
But in
them,
turn, well,
it's a tax deduction if you have more than 12.
right,
If I, don't they donate that money back to the library? The money that they generate, isn't that donated back to the library?
Well, yeah, it's for the purposes
Right.
of
it's
the
accounted
library.
for in the 271 fund, so
So we
so
can do
pretty
it
much they
as-
do all the
okay.
work, they have their board,
And they give
and then
money.
they donate the money, and Joan's able to spend the money.
Okay.
I think
in that
as a non,
particular-
as as a nonprofit, I think you can tap corporate donations. I think that's
Oh,
the
yes,
big
okay.
difference.
And it's also tax deductible.
Right,
Yeah.
which is why you can tap corporations.
That's why they donate.
Right. I think that's the grant money is just grant money, that's you know, it's donated from families, like the Hess family, for instance. And,
Yeah.
you know, you can hit that grant, and that's something that's run by, you know, their custodian and everything. But this is a totally, it's another level when you can become a 501c3. And I just don't know anything, I certainly don't know the details on it.
Well, there's a lot of the townships around here got money from, I can't think of his name right now. He's
Ralph C.
owned the-
Wilson
Ralph
Fund.
C. Wilson Fund, he owned
Yeah.
Motor Guard Transport in
Yeah.
Pontiac, he owned the Buffalo Bills, around, that they've gotten walkability for their communities and connecting to other communities. They've got, and they're matching grants, and so you
Sure,
put
sure.
some money for them, they've gotten a lot of money for that.
Yeah,
To extend pathways and walkways in our community, but again, I don't know how you go about getting that, because I'm not a grant person.
I don't either, I just threw it out there because
But no, it's,
I promised I would, right? I promised Matt I would bring it up.
Matt, bring it up again.
What, as in the fire department? But a lot of it too is these are basically separate entities, like
Yeah.
President Library, I believe, is basically a separate group.
They
So
are.
it's very contingent upon who you have
Organizing
and
it.
organizing it and applying and working with it and their knowledge of what they're doing. So that's where I think the Community Foundation, it took a while, they got it up and I believe it's in place, but are they maintaining their structure, accounting structure and so forth, or did it just kind of slide over to the edge? And that's what sometimes happens.
It's a long-term commitment.
Yes,
If
or,
it's begun. It's not just, let's get the grants and take the money and run kind of thing. It's not like that at all.
No, it's not.
Long-term, and you probably pitch corporations multiple years before they get you.
yes, I think you're
You know,
correct.
so it's not something that is a spur of the moment, let's just try this, and it's gotta be a commitment to go after it.
and that's from the nonprofit aspect.
Yeah, without a
Yeah.
doubt, yep.
And it's kind of on each department to organize that.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the shortcoming.
It's a
is
great
because-
idea, and they got them together.
And I
Right.
think Allison works a lot with grants and smaller opportunities, so again, you start hearing, they say, the fire
Right.
department, obviously, there's a few things out there that are also over there.
Saw a grant, was a base grant for the water sewer.
Yep, so I didn't.
That was a 10% match.
There's some DNR grants out there.
But that's
too.
DNR, and that was
Walkway down there.
specific
The
for-
right.
DEQ,
DEQ, you're right, you're correct.
well, Eagle
No, I
now.
was gonna say.
I know, that gets
Eagle now.
confusing
I'm
too.
still calling it.
Wait till it's Falcon and then we'll.
Might be hawk, you know.
True.
That's
Gets
what's more
covered
regal,
all.
yeah.
Interesting, yeah.
It is.
Maybe we could just ask for some donations from Rochester Hills, they have like 108 million sitting in
Yeah, they're
it's unbelievable.
doing very well for themselves out there, very well.
Is that just because they went to a single hauler or something?
No, it's not just because
They
they saved the
From
roads,
the township to a city.
they saved the roads.
From 10 mills.
They didn't have legacy costs.
Infrastructure. And they don't have all that lakefront property out there that would literally abandon, we let bunch empty homes if we ever went to a city here. Oh, jeez. Could you imagine putting on a lake and then have your mills double?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
We're a city now, you're gonna get your roads plowed and fixed, and you're gonna get sidewalks plowed and taken care of. Your garbage can get picked up, but your taxes just double, you went from 10 mils to 20 mils, so. Not good for lakefront, not good for anybody at lakefront, oh my goodness.
It's not good for anybody, really, no. With your taxes doubling, anybody's taxes doubling.
Nope, I might be part of that number if they were.
You might win what?
We just
Part of
talked
that.
about demographics.
Part of that.
You just-
Might be a little spike in that graph going up this year. if
Oh,
taxes
you
were doubling.
for sale.
Yeah, Then they come uncapped and go up even more.
Well, you know what, they went down dramatically, they were at a 2003 level, not big fun. I don't remember anybody coming in and saying, geez, these things have gone down so much. I can't even
incredible.
fathom how much they've gone down. Can you please explain it to me?
Yes.
I think
I was told they were always gonna go
I
up.
think it's
and they
worth
haven't
more.
gone down.
You guys miscalculated.
This can't be right.
I'm feeling generous. Well, a lot of times you get that, you know, if you're the buyer or you're the seller, right? You know, and I dealt with that, you know, if they were working for you, boy, it was worth a fortune. If you were working with them, that's just pennies on the dollar, you know, so I've seen that side of it too, but it's just, if you're the buyer, it's not worth that much, and if you're the seller, yeah, it's worth a fortune, so.
Good stuff.
Anybody else have any topics they wanted more information on, or?
Long day ahead and another long day ahead,
Do you have
and
enough
my
in there
golly,
for the cleaning
we're done
increase?
for another year.
There was a $15,000 number?
And that was just for one area,
Okay.
the whole
Okay.
contract went up.
That's what I was thinking, we just.
It's like if the library's cleaning cost went up, then that went to their budget, and
Right,
now takes
okay.
care of all of this, so, yeah, that was a big one.
Well, and again, we didn't take the low bidder because it was the previous company that we weren't happy with, we're the next low bidder. So it went from bad to not very good still after we had the meeting with them, and it just, that was actually 16 days. On the 17th day, that spec of paper was gone. They had back that paid somebody. It was 16 days. Just laying there in the hallway, and Lisa and the different people, I said, Joe, that piece of paper's still here, Gary, it's still here, it's still here, it's still here.
Oh, the
It's
little,
gone.
little tests.
I saw him taking a little handheld vacuum cleaner.
Right.
Yeah, I
It's
witnessed
a good
it.
set, yeah.
Yeah,
What was that?
well, like 2 weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah,
'Cause I'd never seen him on my floor before 8:30 at night. That's the earliest I ever saw him, so.
yeah, well, I was here, like, so,
The
Yeah.
cheapest isn't always the best.
yeah, she's just walking around with a little
You
handheld.
do what you pay for.
Good, good,
No,
bad,
I
or
did.
indifferent, the problem is there was a very large difference between minimum and a higher level service, there was no in between.
$43,000.
Yeah, that was the, if there would have been somewhere in the middle, I think choice might have been different, but it was just a big, big difference.
But if it's done right and it becomes less of a distraction, it might pay off. You
Well,
know?
there's an old
And
saying,
hopefully
you get
they
what you
will
pay
do it.
for, but I mean, still, it's just, you know, we gotta manage the taxpayers' money accordingly. If you just, gotta give them a 1-year shot.
They've witnessed one of the baskets in my office regularly.
They don't water the plants, do they?
No.
Put extra work on it.
He'd be dead.
Was it in the bid set?
Ron steam cleaned the carpeting in here after he got done painting, and he actually took pictures of the water that he was pumping.
Oh, yeah.
It was bad.
Yeah, I don't even know how
So
often
we
this is
got
probably.
new carpet done, Bradley said like in 2001 or 2002, he can't remember what year it was. And when did we clean it? 13 or 14, never been cleaned.
Yeah, so
Yeah, that
steamed
was-
it
It never been
in,
cleaned.
and it was.
I was here the day they were dumping that water outside, I thought it was in a vomit. It was the nastiest, vilest stuff you ever saw.
Right.
They came in on a weekend and cleaned it, just, it was horrible. But again.
Just, there was no
you
money,
let
at some
carpet
point,
go
there was
dirty
no
for
money.
12
Prior
years,
to that,
you're never
maybe.
gonna get it clean. You're gonna get it clean, but you aren't gonna get it clean.
So, it's 10 o'clock, we're gonna take a break.
Let's take a break.
Wow, it's just such.
But this isn't a heavy traffic area. If you get up in heavy traffic area, that's up permanently staying. Would you go
Oh, that was
12
fine.
years without cleaning carpet in your house?
It's for distance.
Oh,
These are my driving, pretty much. I didn't know if we would be watching anything up there.
No good movies.
No good movies, not today. Thank you. I'll just-
You know the same one? Oh, yes.
I can, Barbara and I can share. Yeah, I think so. Make sure Barbara and I-
Even these glasses, last time when I was trying to read the numbers.
Oh. Yeah, you can't pull those up.
This is the same one from the preliminary budget.
Every year it gets older if you leave your glasses at home or something, you know,
Yeah.
it just gets worse.
Scott, you want to take this large piece of paper? Yeah. Let's peel it. Go to the first page, looks like that. All the colors. And this is the first chance that the department heads get to see those recommendations from supervisors. Police is on the first page of this multicolored page, halfway down. You can see the requests and the recommendations. So we got the 8 additional patrol officers. The police is the 207 fund. And we're in code 1 officer to the 208 fund. Permanent hiring the EMC position. That's coded in the budget already, so that's staged and ready to go.
And was for, actually for 19 as well.
Yeah. And the second section on that sheet shows a program that the chief brought forward. Supervisor thought it sounded like a good idea in that preliminary meeting, and it's been incorporated as well. Just as written there, eliminate some part-time dispatchers to add a full-time based on some efficiencies that would be gained. The chief has more details and memo about how that would be structured and work. Eliminate part-time officers to hire 3 full-time officers. Reduce some overtime, so that's it's all been incorporated and sounded prudent. And the 3 patrol vehicles, that's made, like we referenced earlier, that's part of the SAD, that first .425, and that's the part that's allocated and coded to the police department for police cruisers. And below that, you'll see the capital improvements that the chief brought forward. There's 5 of them, 3 were granted, the first 3. HVAC upgrade, the controlling system, to try to balance and regulate the heating and cooling system at the PD, try to make it function better and get some efficiencies and stuff like that. The building was built in, I know the bonds were in 98, when was it finished?
2001, I think that opened.
2001, right?
Yeah, you're up to fire, yeah.
Yeah, so it's never been repainted at that point, ever. So try to spread some paint around over there, make it look a little more presentable, tidy it up. Carpet, which in the installation part of that too. That's kind of a theme throughout the township actually, so we're trying to get after some of that. Then the furniture and the upgrade, the mobile video system, those are good ideas, but just as far as financially right now, we have those listed as no.
What's mobile video?
In-car cameras, in-car cameras, dash
Is that
cameras.
covered with SAD? Can you use some of the SAD money for this?
He's using 108,000 of the SAD money
For vehicles?
for vehicles.
We need at some point, and this is just, like I said in the previous meeting, some of these things are not like these particular 2, the furniture replacement and the upgrade to the mobile video. Those are things that I want to make you guys aware of, that at some time in the not too distant future, we're going to have to address. That's not something we need to do today, but the technology with what we use in terms of that mobile video is getting older, much older. So we're going to need at some point to replace all those in-car cameras. We're going to need at some point to replace the back end, all the storage, the platform that it resides on, the equipment that allows the video to upload automatically when we get back to the station. All those things are going to need to be addressed, although it's not something we need to do today.
Next year?
In the next several years.
Is it something that you could tap the SAD for then, since it's equipment?
I think so.
Yeah,
Yes,
it is.
but again, the
Understood.
funding's available, like I
Yep.
said, but yeah.
It's just this year was the choice of the cars over that, so
Okay.
that was, I think, more than anything.
And then he said, then we look
But
at,
you're right.
in the future, like I said, in adjusting the SAD 295 number.
Sure.
Moving it down, we can look at some of that stuff, and that could be the difference in which we move it. So, say, well, we need to generate an extra 170,000 for the equipment, or we're gonna do half of it this year, do 85 this year, 85 this. Look at those numbers before, we decide on what we're gonna set for the number for the SAD for the following year, so.
Scott, those three patrol vehicles that you wanna buy, the three that you're gonna take out of service, when you sell them at auction, where does that money go back into the SAD money, or does that go back into the
Depends
general
on
fund,
where
or-
it depends on where those cars were bought from. If they were bought with general fund money, then
Then they go
that
back
would
to
be
general fund?
revenue generated back to general fund. If those,
SAD goes right back to SAD,
we haven't, we,
Bought anything with the SAD?
right,
or go forfeiture money?
right, that money by law has to go back into those, to
I
those
see.
restricted money funds and has to keep rolling back over again. We can't buy those cars with restricted money, sell them and put that money back into the general
Yeah, I
fund.
understand.
Yeah.
But again, half the time, that's what he's using that money for anyways, is to
Yeah,
buy
yeah.
additional,
Right.
so it's kind of like it does.
I'm good.
If you go to page 24 in the budget book, that's where the 207 fund starts. So that's the revenue side of the 207 fund for the police department. We'll just wheel through these real quick, and if you have any questions, just bring them up, but a few different main categories where the police department draws the majority of its funding.
Villages,
You have-
villages.
Yep, you have the millages at the top, you have the SAD, and you have the contribution from the general fund. Those are the largest categories. So those two main groups, they have some grants that they administer and work on throughout the year. Some interest revenue, some other fees that are just come with police work, like alarm ordinances and just different tickets that are written, warrants, stuff that happens.
So the SAD decreased.
Yeah, the rate was, the millage rate was dropped by the board on that.
Yep.
It's a little bit of tax relief, but
Yeah.
then, yeah, it brings in a little bit less revenue. That is true.
Yes, it does.
So that's page 24, 207 fund is the police. Starting on 25, you have where all the different expenses are coded. You can see in the salaries line, especially if you go back to like 18, it's larger because of the SAD largely, and staging and setting up for hiring some staff.
But the part-time offset some of that,
It did, yes.
because the part-time went away, some of it.
Right. Retiree health, that's just we were a little over on our 19 calcs, so that's what that is. Workers' comp is trending up a little bit. You get a little bit older workforce, and based on just the line of work, I mean, there's some activity in that category. One thing that's happening, this will be another trend that happens throughout these budgets going forward, is see the defined contributions category, especially in police and fire. You'll see that this next year. Those going up because the new employees coming in, they're getting a 401k style benefits, so it's not that those benefits per se are more expensive, it's just, but we've talked about that, how it's just the conversion of benefits going forward. Just looking real quick here. Uniforms, I mean, you're gonna have new people, you gotta put them in uniform. R&M vehicle. Some trend in the
Yeah, so
office.
now more people on the road.
Yeah. We've actually held that gas and oil number pretty constant, been conservative on that, just because again, we could be subject to the pricing fluctuations. So
Are you adding patrol cars out there?
Well, no, actually, we're not.
Okay.
When we, you're talking about the number of vehicles?
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's a one-for-one switch.
Okay.
When several years ago, we did a complete inventory of all the vehicles that we had in our fleet, and there were just too many of them. The cars that sat out there that didn't get used, there were, and because of that, we experienced problems, and then when you do try to use them, there's expenditures in terms of repairs. So after that evaluation, we sold a pretty fair amount of those cars that were not being used. And now, and got the fleet down to a manageable point where we can, monitor mileage, we can expect to get, close to 100,000 miles out of these patrol cars. And it'll be a one-for-one switch. When we bring a new one in, we'll move an older one out. That way we don't have extra cars sitting around, we're not spending money needlessly.
Right.
And with the newer people, some of them run 2 shifts, some of them don't, so now basically all the cars will run 2 shifts. So
Okay.
that's where your additional mileage, additional gas use, additional maintenance, because the more users, the more we maintain, the more gas and oil.
More efficient.
It is. Like, we had patrol cars parked under the islands up there in Liberty. I never noticed till I was walking in Relay for Light. You literally couldn't see the vehicles, there's so much dirt on the windows, they'd sat there for so long. We had one winter, 23 batteries got replaced. It just was one of those things.
The car needs to be driven too.
They were good vehicles, right? But when they reduced the workforce by, 17 people, or actually 27 people, 17 retired and 10 got laid off, and nobody pushed those patrol cars in, but they just sat there. So it just was a decision to be made, but it was made, and now, like I said, it's running a lot more efficiently, and you got, 2 people per car now, so.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to the vehicles for a second. There was 108,000 you proposed to spend on them. Are those Tahoes, or there's gonna be the Tauruses, Ford Tauruses? I talked to you briefly.
Yeah, ideal would be the Chevy Tahoes and 2 of them, and then 1 unmarked car, because we have a small fleet of Detective Bureau and unmarked cars that we need to also.
Is it your intention to switch to Tahoes from the?
It is,
Taurus side?
we previously bought Ford Explorers, and the reason we did that was because it was cost effective. You could buy those cars for $26,000, and they were good SUVs. Ford has since raised the price, and the difference between the Explorer and the Tahoe is a couple of $1,000s, and for the amount of car that you get, it's not even a comparison, number one. And number two, the resale value is incredibly higher with the Tahoes than it ever would be with the Explorers, so it just makes sense to buy those cars.
And talking to the officers, I mean, that's their office, their shift and everything, and they prefer the Tahoe.
There's more room.
More room and
Yeah,
everything.
it's just a more solid car. You can just feel it when you're driving.
Is that all-wheel drive? Or four-wheel?
Four, yeah.
Four-wheel drive, okay.
The Tahoes?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're four-wheel, I think they click on
Yeah.
four-wheel drive.
Okay.
And it makes a lot more sense to buy them than those Explorers.
The Explorers,
For $3 more.
worked, and they were a good vehicle, especially for the money. But now it just makes sense to buy these Tahoes.
I agree.
Bigger bang for your buck.
Yeah, for sure. And the resale value, like I said, is much higher.
Yeah. They seem to last longer than Explorers.
Yeah, because
I guess the maintenance costs.
they're just more substantial. They're just a better, it seems to me, they're just a better built car,
Yeah.
stronger. Yeah, I know you.
Yeah, when you buy them, do you piggyback off like the county, cause they?
We mainly buy from 3 different places, either the state My Deal contract, Oakland County cooperative bid, or Macomb County also does cooperative bidding in terms of vehicles. And different contracts offer different vehicles, so we'll look at all 3 of those depending, and look at what we're interested in buying and what prices they offer. Like, the Tahoes come from from one particular bid, and they won't appear on the other ones because that particular dealership gets the contract for that particular car
Okay.
in the state. So.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so we'll buy them from whichever contract makes the most sense for us.
And I know you haven't had Tahoes long enough to know the maintenance costs on them. Have you talked to other municipalities that have Tahoes, and I guess compare the maintenance on them? The question I was wondering, are they maintenance Are they cheaper to maintain than Ford Explorers?
Yeah, we haven't had a whole lot of,
Mileage.
yeah, we haven't had a whole lot of trouble with the Fords. I don't expect we'll have a whole lot of trouble with the Tahoes either, and I'm not aware of any other agency.
Wasn't there a recall on the Explorers way back when?
There was
for
a-
the exhaust?
Yeah, there was, and that was those were all fixed at no cost to us.
Right.
So there was no,
Recalls
yeah.
and replaces.
Yeah.
You look at the monthly bill payment, we pay Suburban Ford more than we do Longhammer.
Yeah, but I think we only got maybe 1 or 2 Tahoes right now.
We have 3 now.
3, we're just starting to get into
Yeah.
them, so.
Yeah.
But they're both American-made vehicles and
Oh, yeah.
they're both good, you know.
But you never know also with the manufacturers what's gonna happen from year to year, you know, I mean.
Yeah, okay.
So, you know, the Ford Crown Vic was the police car for a whole lot of years, and all of a sudden Ford said, you know what, we're not gonna make them anymore.
So we did Tahoe.
Well, and part of what happened was everybody panicked and said, how are we gonna do without Ford Crown Vic? So there were a number of agencies that said, we're just gonna buy them up and we're gonna stow them away, and then we're gonna use them as we need them. And that caused some of what Gary was talking about, dead batteries, dry rot on tires, you know, rusted brake rotors, all the rest, it was a horrible idea.
Right. Caprice, the Chevy Caprice was the ultimate police car.
Caprice,
Yeah, for sure.
And they went to the Impala, and then I don't think they make either one anymore.
Now we're going to Tahoes.
Yeah,
This goes in cycles.
yeah.
Deviating a little bit from vehicles, since you're able to hire more policemen, is there any more thought to the Waymaster?
Well, ideally, what we may do, and it's gonna take us some time to get ramped up here,
Right.
especially with the way recruiting goes, and we're gonna close applications here in the next few days, and we don't have the number that we had hoped for. I mean, we have a fairly decent number, but we don't have the number that we hoped for, and then it's gonna take time. We've gotta do background investigations, we've gotta hire these people, we gotta get them through the training program, and, you know, when we get to the number that we wanna get to, then ideally what we would do is dedicate, you know, 2 particular traffic units, one on day shift, one on afternoon shift, and maybe cross-train them, you know, with some kind of motor carrier training, and then that way they'd be able, their sole purpose would be traffic enforcement.
Okay, which would incorporate the Waymaster.
It could, yeah. I wouldn't sit here and say definitively that, yes, we're gonna do that, because, you know, I don't know what the manpower issues will be and how we'll look at that particular time, but it's certainly a possibility. But I'll also say, like I said before, you know, I understand the need, and I think that the traffic units can do the same thing in terms of trucks, and they can write violations, but when you task those people with portable scales and trying to get those trucks places and weigh in them and all the rest of that stuff, you don't get a whole lot done in one day with just 2 people, number one. Number two, you know, my approach has always been and always will be that traffic enforcement, motor carrier enforcement, drug enforcement, whatever kind of specialization you're talking about, the purpose is compliance. It's not to generate revenue. I understand what we're all doing here today, and I understand.
Oh, I'm working on compliance, just the
Yeah,
roads.
yeah.
Just to send a message
Yeah.
out there that there's somebody watching and quit
I
pulling
didn't mean
all
to
this
insinuate
building
that you weren't.
material
Yeah,
on the
no,
road.
I didn't mean to insinuate that you weren't. I just want to make sure everybody understands that, you know, I understand the need to do that, and I think the traffic units could absolutely do that. And like I said, they could be cross-trained in motor carrier, and we may do that, but it's something that we'll have to address once we get to where we want to be.
Okay.
Okay, you just said one of the things interesting, you said that the job posting, it's almost done.
Yeah, we've been open for we've been taking applications for the last.
Whether it's just extended if you haven't
6
reached the
weeks.
number, or just,
Well, we will, and it'll depend on, we'll just reopen it, is what we'll
Okay.
do. You know, we've got academy classes that are in session now, so a lot of what we draw in terms of applications are young people that are in these academy classes now. So, you know, and they will graduate in December. So, and we do recruiting trips to every one of these academy
I'm just
classes.
gonna ask you, do you do recruiting?
Yeah, we send people and we give our pitch and we try and get them interested in what we're doing here and the opportunities. So, you know, if we get to a point where we've got open positions and haven't filled them yet, then sure, we'll just reopen the applications and keep going.
Okay.
We get anybody retiring before the end of this calendar year?
No, I think the next 2 retirements are February and April.
Okay. So like I said, that list, hopefully we got enough to carry over to backfill them too when they go.
Yeah, we've got, as it stands right now, so we, 4 of our part-time officers, we've actually converted 6 to full-time. 2 to cover retirements that took place this year, and 4 of the 9 positions created by the SAD.
Okay.
So we've got 1 part-time officer left. So we need to fill 5 more full-time spots right now just to satisfy the special assessment. And you'll see in the proposal here to eliminate the part-time positions, that will create 3 more full-time spots that we want to fill. So ideally 8 more.
The 1 part-time we got, he doesn't want full-time, correct?
No, we're still talking about that.
Okay.
We're still working on it.
I've been talking about it in a couple of years. but,
Yeah,
but-
I've talked to him several times. He's retired law enforcement. He
Right.
retired actually from Wayne County.
Right.
I think he kind of likes his part-time hours.
He's good at what he does, but it's.
Yeah, and I told him, I said, you know, we want you to stay, we'd love to have you, but we need some full-time people. And so we'll see what happens.
And then next page 26, one of the largest changes at the bottom is the 97-107. And if you harken back to that sheet with the capital projects, that's where those are coded. So that's what we'll code all the activity for the HVAC upgrade, the painting of the police department, and the carpet next year. So we've got some projects that we take next year. People, let's give you time, Chief, to just.
Yep.
To hit his, this is really kind of a strategic plan, it's nice the way he's laid this out. Just want to give him time to walk you through that.
So, in 2019, considering the funding from the special assessment, which we didn't use until most recently, we were funded for what would have been a total of 66.5 full-time equivalent. I say full-time equivalent because it's actually 61 full-time positions, 5 part-time positions, and 2 that we would have filled with drug forfeiture money, which would have taken us to 68, 66.5, because 5 part-timers equals 3.5 full-timers. In actuality, what we had 57.5, we had 53 full-timers, 5 part-timers, and 1 officer that we had funded with drug forfeiture money. So in 2020, you know, the proposal is basically the same. It'll get us to 66.5 full-time equivalents, and that would include, that was if we were, before we actually filled the positions funded by the special assessment, that was the proposal. We would get to 66.5, and that would include 5 part-timers. But once we were able to do that and got to the point where we had moved 4 of those 5 part-time officers up to full-time and only had 1 left, this is a unique opportunity for us to get to where we want to be in terms of full-time employees. So, you know, the proposal is to take the money that we would use on those 5 part-time positions, and then a few extra dollars, which we will take from our overtime line, because we believe, you know, with the extra bodies and the full-time positions and the way scheduling works, that we could certainly absorb that extra $15,000, which would take us to 66 full-time police officers, no part-timers. We like the way that looks in terms of scheduling, you know, with contractual obligations in terms of vacations and comp time and things like that. And it also, what it does for us, it's an opportunity for us to recruit people to these full-time jobs. It's hard to get, when we say to somebody, we want to offer you a part-time job, and, you know, with the idea that looking forward towards full-time employment when the opportunity presents itself, and somebody else comes and says to that young person, or however old they may be, qualified person, and says, I've got a full-time job for you. There's no if come, there's no maybe, there's no somewhere down the road. We lose out on those people. And so we've lost out on a number of qualified and good candidates because of that. We've managed to still attract some good candidates as well, but we would rather not have to fight that battle. So we see this as a unique opportunity to do exactly that, at no cost to the township. I think that you know, these when you get these full-time employees, you know, not that our part-timers haven't been and weren't dedicated, but I think you get a full-time employee, they're in for the long haul. You know, they're dedicated, they wanna make this a career, they're gonna stay here, they're not just getting a part-time wage with no benefits, and when somebody makes them a better offer, they're gonna jump ship, and then we gotta go through the whole training process again, and spend money getting them on board and all the rest of that stuff. Same thing basically with the dispatcher position, and this is not unique to us, this is a problem. We went down and toured the Detroit Police Department Communications and Real-Time Crime Center last week, and it's a pretty interesting what they have going on there. But they've got a lot of the issues that certainly on a bigger scale that we do, which is trying to recruit dispatchers, trying to train them, trying to keep them. You know, for years it's been a fairly hard thing to do, and it can be a transient job because people get into that job and they realize that it's not what they thought it was going to be. You know, and I hate to do this, but when I first started in police work, I was a cadet, and part of what I did was dispatch. And you know, somebody would call and you'd write it down on the run card, and you'd send it on a conveyor belt up to the person who was dispatching, and they'd press the button and they'd talk. You know, and that was pretty much it. Well, now it's, you know, computers and
You're telling us your age.
well, I know, but I mean, that's the point. I mean, it's a way different job now, and it's not an easy job. They've got a hard job on top of what they listen to and hear and deal with every day. So, anyway, right now we're funded for 11 full-time dispatchers and 2 part-time dispatchers. So we've been fortunate because we've filled those part-time jobs with people that have retired from here, and so they've been able to work 20 or 28 hours. But again, so that sometimes prevents us from attracting, you know, the full-timers that we need. We also have scheduling issues because they can only work a certain amount of hours every week. If they're in the pension system, they can only work 20. If they're not, they can only work 28. So, you know, we've got people that they can work 2 full days and maybe a half a day. So now we've got to bring somebody on overtime to fill the other half of that day. So it presents scheduling problems. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to eliminate one of those part-time spots to get us to 12 full-time dispatchers. It gives us 4 on each shift. It allows us to be able to have, you know, schedule 2 people in the room at least every day. It allows for vacations and other obligations in terms of time off. We don't have to deal with those scheduling problems. We believe that we can reduce our overtime, you know, with the small amount of money, the extra money that's gonna take us to do this. And once again, we've had several of them leave recently. We had a part-timer that was gonna work full-time, and then she ended up resigning on us, you know, for her own personal reasons. She left, so we're actually down to 9 and 1 right now. And we're in the process of hiring 3 new people, 2 full-timers to get us to 11. And if we're successful here, the other part-time hire the 3rd person that we're hiring, we're gonna hire on a part-time basis, with the eye towards making that person our 12th full-time dispatcher. So we'll get them all involved in the training program here in the very near future and get up to speed as quick as we can.
I think going back, talking about dispatch, does the fire department kick in any money?
No, but that's a good idea.
Well, I know that. I know it was talked about before, and it just.
No.
The fact that they both get money out of the general fund, you're just gonna take.
Yeah.
You're gonna take away
Transfer from one to
police's
another.
transfer, give it
Yeah.
to fire, and then, so, yeah, it's a shell game.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, to me, it doesn't matter where it comes
Well,
from.
see, you're taking the cost,
We do, yeah, but like Gary said, I mean, it's gonna come from the general fund somewhere, right? I mean,
Okay.
and so, it's, quite honestly, the number of fire runs and the number of medical runs is a large portion of what they deal with. But,
A large volume of calls too.
it is a large volume
To
of calls,
dispatch.
but for my money, we don't mind administrating it, we don't mind controlling it, we don't mind, you know, dealing with. It's not an easy thing to deal with, and it's, like I said, it's not just exclusive to us. You could ask any police agency, as far as I'm concerned in this country, and they'll tell you that one of their biggest challenges is dispatch. But I still think it's very important. It's a hard job. I think it's worthwhile to have here in-house. I think they do a terrific job. They know the community, they know the people they're working with and for, and they know, you know, they know ins and outs about this community that some regional dispatcher could never know. In terms of vehicles, really no change. We're at $108,000, which comes from the special assessment money, and we've already discussed that. Along with the new hires, we have some additional costs that will, the mobile microphones, we have to buy a microphone for each officer. They sync that to that car and that camera when they come on duty, and they're responsible for taking care of that. And we also have to purchase some additional rifles to be able to equip the new officers that are coming on board.
Now, are you going 2 in 1 on the police vehicles, or are you going 3 because you just bought an unmarked vehicle?
Well, it's 2 in 1 here, and if we need to supplement that, then we can use, you know, restricted money if need be.
Okay, so we just approved an unmarked vehicle at one of the board meetings recently, so.
Yep,
that's where you-
yep. You did, and what happened was there was actually some additional cost. I think we were over about 6,000 and some change, and we made a line item transfer to cover that extra
Okay.
6,000. In terms of the capital improvements, like I said, there are some things that I just want to make you aware of. The paint, like Derek said, I mean, the place hasn't been repainted since 2001, since it opened. It's in need of some attention.
Is that lead-based paint? You know?
Geez, I hope not.
No.
I don't know, it's built in 2000.
Post 1978.
Oh, yeah.
78,
It's
okay.
non-lead-based, yeah.
Yeah, I hope that's okay.
Yeah.
Scott, the only thing that's HVAC upgrade here, it's 70,000, and on the approved sheet is 40, so the 40 is a revised number?
It is. The original was, I think, roughly $68,000 was the estimates that we got. We did spend about $12,000 in restricted money here recently to make necessary upgrades that we had to do right now. So, you know, I think with the $40,000, we can get to where we need to be in terms of.
Okay.
in terms
I
of the
just saw that
upgrade.
difference, right, so, okay.
Yep. And then the carpeting, like Derek said, I understand it's an issue, you know, pretty much township-wide. Again, I believe it's the original carpeting from when the building opened, so. We try to do the best we can in terms of, we get somebody in there to clean it once a year, and so we're doing the best we can, but it's in need of some attention as well.
And the 60,000 is the entire interior, but.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we had we got one of the floor covering, local floor covering companies to come in and give us an estimate. That'll cover
Cover the paint, same as the paint?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that'll cover the whole place.
Good.
Carpeting squares or, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Those are nice.
I think commercial, that's the way to go.
Yeah,
It just
for sure.
seems like everybody's doing that, the
Yep.
squares. Yeah. And you can rat hole a few, stick them back there, and if you get a bad spot, you pull it out and replace it, and
Yeah.
they're all back to the same
Yep.
color again, so, good.
And then we were asked to provide the potential retirements in 2020. This is a list of people that could retire. I think we're probably looking at 3 of those realistically.
Is Belling retired?
No, I don't think he'll retire.
I see there's another thing next to his name there, so that meant he was retired.
No, I think he'll.
Tell everybody said they don't laugh.
Yeah, I think he'll stay at least through 2020 and maybe a little bit longer.
Good.
We've got a couple of midnight officers, I think, that are ready to pull the plug, and I think those will certainly go. I think the rest of them are probably good through 2020 and beyond.
Good.
The other 2 parts are just explanations of what I talked about with the dispatchers and the police officers in terms of the hours and the money.
Scott, did you, I haven't seen your, you wanted an emergency coordinator?
That was in 2019, if you remember, and then it was brought before you, the new hire with qualifications, and you guys approved that actually at a board meeting this year.
Yep.
But we didn't,
When the
But
SAD was.
but he's
We
not
didn't-
working yet.
no,
because of-
we did not make, he'll begin on November 4th.
Okay,
So we
next
didn't
week.
make, we
Next
didn't,
Monday.
yep, we didn't make the hire until we were given the go-ahead after the Court of Appeals.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, sure.
and thankfully, the approved hire was still available, and we're looking forward to having him on board. I've talked to Matt Covey, and we're, everybody's ready to hit the ground with their feet moving.
Is he gonna be stationed in the police department?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. That's it.
Oh, that's good.
Lisa Fritz is retiring?
Lisa is not retiring.
She's not, okay.
Nope.
You see that footnote, handwritten footnote there on the back page.
She is not retiring,
Okay.
but when she does, so she is our last part-time dispatcher, and she's here because of, she's in the pension system, she can only work 20 hours.
Okay.
So she is our last part-time dispatcher, assuming that we're successful and able to get to 12. When she retires, we would just not replace her and do without any part-time
Okay.
in that room.
Scott, do you remember the weighmaster who tried to impound the cement mixer in Warren when it was full?
Yeah.
And tried to.
What was it? Really?
He did.
We had a motor carry guy
It's
that
about $300,000,
yeah.
that cement would have,
Pardon?
we tried to get that impounded until, I don't know if it was you or Jerry stepped in and said,
We also had a motor carrier guy that stopped the funeral procession as well.
Serious?
Oh, yeah. You can't make that stuff up.
no. That's right. I couldn't remember if you or Jerry that was telling me just about the weighmaster.
He was trying to implement a
Cement mixer.
Yeah,
full cement concrete mixer.
on its way to a job, he tried to
Yeah.
impound it.
So what happens when you impound it and park it with all that wet cement in it? Just
It
Keep
gets,
it rolling.
have to, right?
The more you
And
turn,
you're
the
not
hotter it
making
gets,
any
the hotter it quicks, the quicker it sets up though. That's the bad thing about
Just a
that.
disaster, though.
I saw a couple times when they pulled into job sites where they got buried right there in the ditch and they had to dump right, just unload the truck right there, because the wrecker couldn't pull it out full, just to get me, just, I said, pull a tree out of that ground one time, that wrecker tied off to a tree and they're trying to pull it out, he says, you gotta empty that truck out, that's it. So off Oak Hill Road, they dumped 11 yards of footing concrete right there in the pile. Nothing you can do, it just, it happens.
No, and we do, and there is, I don't know that there's any more of a problem in this community than there is in any other in terms of trucks. But, it's a problem everywhere. There are a few locations in this town where, we get some frequent calls about trucks that shouldn't be there, and we try and address them as quickly as we can, and they seem to be the same places over and over again.
I just noticed them lately in neighborhoods, because there's a lot of building going on.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And there's some really big semis coming down.
Yes, yep. Yep, and, some of them try to push the envelope in terms of weight and the load they're carrying and how they're carrying it and those kind of things.
You get trucks all the time on Hospital Road.
We had a semi come down our neighborhood block
Because
this
it's
in,
flat compared to.
delivering a
others.
hot tub,
Yeah.
and then it got stuck.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my
And then it cranked, it was, I'm like, oh my gosh, these guys are not supposed to.
We did a big remodel, 3 houses short of the dead end of Lake Angeles Lane that was back in the 80s. And a semi come down with skylights about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he pulled down the road, and it is a 1-lane driveway is all it is. He got all the way back down there and got to the end to deliver the skylights, like 4 or 6 skylights. And so we're leaving, so we left, and Dad said, he got out of there like a 9:15 that night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had to back out, there's no
Yeah.
turnaround, you had to back out, and there's
Curbs,
Oh.
One of the first things that somebody asked me when I got here was, is what we do about these roads, and I don't wanna open any wounds here, but, you know, my first answer was, you know, don't have garbage trucks driving down 5 days a week, you know, and I think what you guys have done is gonna go a long way,
Preserving.
to address that.
It's
Like
not
Gary,
gonna- it's not
like
gonna-
Gary said last night, it's not gonna fix them tomorrow,
Right.
but it'll certainly help moving forward.
And when you do fix them,
Yep.
longevity of the road.
Yep.
Because it's basically, if you live there, it's on your dime.
Yeah,
You gotta pay to fix it.
yeah, I think,
You can't tear off, rebuild, whatever it is. you
yeah,
gotta pay for it.
I think it's huge, I think it'll go a long way.
I remember moving in about 10 years ago, and I'm sitting in my living room, and for some reason I was working from home at that time, and just seeing the trucks, I'm like, that's another one? Oh my gosh, that's another one? Oh my gosh, that's another one?
Every day's
Really?
garbage day.
Yeah,
They must have a lot of garbage in this area.
We have all dead-end streets on Hospital, so there's garbage trucks backing down those streets all day long.
And again, that's not an attack on the garbage truck.
No, it's they're doing their job.
No, it's not.
And it's anything, any type of large vehicle
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
They gotta back down.
Yeah.
There's
Back
no
down
way.
3 a week,
How many
Yeah.
garbage services
rather
do
than
we have?
15 or 18 a week, it's a big difference. It's a big difference.
We have, those roads are constructed like
Yeah.
major roads either, from the
Subdivision streets
subdivisions.
or glorified driveways are out there.
The sections where you come off the main road and go onto the side roads, there's no road there anymore.
No,
It's gone.
I got a call a couple of years ago, about 3 o'clock in the morning, we had a barricaded gunman, so I got dressed and went to, I can't remember what street we were on, but I got dressed, we went out there, we called Oakland County, the SWAT team came out to help us. We were standing in this parking lot on this small side road, and all these guys dressed in camo and a bunch of cops standing around, we got this, a perimeter set up around this house. Here comes this garbage truck. Pulls in, like exactly what you guys are talking about. Pulls in like this, backs up. I'm like, whoa, hold on a second.
beep.
Yeah, with the beep.
We wanna put some guys in the back of the truck.
Like right on cue.
Can we just jump on the side? Did you just gonna pull us down by the house down
We'll go in undercover as garbage man.
there? There is a barricaded gunman, so
Yeah.
just stay low.
Thanks for calling in sick, bye.
Yeah, send the county's dragoon truck home.
Yeah, right.
Take the rest of the day off, we got the day.
Yeah.
Hey, you can secure the whole.
Yeah, all the garbage trucks are.
All 5 in a row, just like.
Yeah. Red, blue.
So if anybody has any other questions, by all means, you know, call me, send me an email, I'll be happy to answer anything that anybody.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, thank you, very good.
Thank you.
Very thorough.
Speaking of the garbage, I got a robocall this morning at 3:21 a.m.
Oh,
GFL?
Yes.
Yeah, I did
I just
too.
got one about an hour.
Did you sign up?
You beat
But
Carrie.
yeah, I've already signed up.
I was messing around last night and they called me back.
they did, was it a
It was-
machine or was it a
It was a
person?
machine, and it was a
Yeah.
recorded message
Recorded message.
saying, you know, just, we're busy, just please be patient.
They give you
Yeah.
a website?
Usual stuff.
3 in the
They give
morning.
you a
Three.
website?
Yeah, it
21
did
a.m.
everything. I finally said,
And I
I'm not
got
listening
up,
to this
you know,
anymore,
'cause
I'm
I-
done.
I
I think it was, I
Don't
wanna
get
say it was
calls like
about
that
12.
talking, so I got, then I saw the
last night.
586,
Sunday.
so I got it, I thought, oh no, my
Pay for
mother-in-law.
my-
Then I get a
Five breaks or
robo.
whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Done.
I don't know how mine worked out, but my
Yeah.
garbage,
Yeah.
my contract with,
When
I think it's with Waste Management, I think it goes till March 30th, just
There
by
was a
chance.
waste management truck in our neighborhood this morning, as I was doing, so they aren't taking any of the customers.
Yeah, they're collecting my garbage, I've seen no notice from them whatsoever.
And they
So,
signed
You
it.
explain
They're
that.
gonna
That's
continue
wonderful.
that.
Next up, I-
Cause I went everybody,
Yeah.
then I called, then they called me back 3 or 4 hours later, this was earlier.
What time they come by your place?
It was
They usually come early in the morning,
Enough that
and now they send it to later, yeah.
Pickup is gonna be November
I
7th,
thought just
and they
under
gave me a
the-
confirmation
I
on it.
think,
Yes.
I think GFL.
But it's just.
I have
And I spoke
five
to
bags
Dave.
off my next door neighbor.
I think it's-
That's the best we can.
Yeah, I mean, I walked down.
I really
I
think-
think it was just a number that was listed on the internet. I just
Their date was, this was last
This is
week.
the last one.
So, but
Yes.
they're not
I
set
didn't
up.
either.
And I told people, just say.
But I wonder if they, you know, did that because of all the people complaining on us. And I don't know.
I figured they'd build.
321.
Yeah, it was.
That's not gonna make them happy.
No, that's
Yeah.
why I'm thinking, oh great, now we're gonna get
I was
calls.
gonna say 321
But
AM.
was it,
I'm already
what
signed up.
numbers did they have to do the robocalls? Like, you were already signed up, so who were they calling?
I don't, they had
Everybody
no,
on their list.
they had nothing from me except what I did last night. I never
you
reached
got-
out to them whatsoever.
But you got a call,
I did get a call based on what we were doing last night at the meeting.
so yours did eventually go through.
It never, they must have had my number because I was on the site. And I said I was from Waterford. Because remember, there was that section, if
But
you're
did
from
you,
Waterford,
right,
click here.
but did you have to put in your number?
They had my address and they had my phone number because that's what I was in there with.
Okay, but you never knew if it went through, but it had to have gone through for them to have.
To have my number. I never reached out to them
Okay.
before last night.
Alright. Well, that answers that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's, testing the water is like.
And we were 586. I was just talking with Kim and she was 586, and I talked to somebody on 586.
I wanna say mine was 586 too.
And I called the 586 number and I got right through. It was a Sterling Heights number, but it was a different number than what that they had provided to us. But they still were able to sign you up.
586-772-8900.
Right.
12
No,
hours
I was
ago.
gonna say, there
So it was
was.
11 o'clock last
Joan
night.
to come
A
in,
different
Gary?
phone number
What's
before
You want Joan to
the
come in?
one that they provided, and then so this is like, again,
She's right out there.
Yeah, that's just it. The average person. Yeah, if you can't get through, you do a little.
Because I
bit
called
more
and left a
research
message,
and
but
find
I
out.
left my property address too as well. And
Yeah.
then they called me back 4 hours later.
So they put that portal
Yeah.
within the
From
first
Roseville,
few days. So
We've
they
heard
Yeah.
complaints about it.
586-772-8900.
A specified phone number, but it
Did you
just-
get a robocall this morning?
See, I did it the old fashioned way. I asked them to email me.
Sandy check.
And then what, and I just wrote a check and mailed it
Well, I
all
was
back.
321 this morning.
What was that?
And you didn't get no phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Since 1975.
I've already signed up.
I got changed.
I guess they just,
Like something,
everybody else
I can't believe you got a check. I can't still believe you write a check. I says, why, your mother retired from the post
And I
office.
got.
She's retired from the post office.
This was about
Because I
You
figured
need
it
a
was
pension
me
coming in.
leaving a message.
well, I got a confirmation number,
And she got
because I always said,
your picture
November
for
7th.
75
You want your confirmation number? I said, yes, I do. And I wrote her name down, so I have that sheet.
I remember when they went from 3 to
Yeah,
4.
I wrote it down.
I was at 33.
Now, see,
And Gary Seldom sent a
Planner
check.
at work too, so
It's
I
a
I should, I went there.
Yeah.
Oh,
I know it's 33 something.
I'm glad.
I took it out, because it was the last day.
Number Carol in the pocket.
Back then they were weak,
I
and
bought
they were worse.
it. Yeah, so.
But then she got to the point
My dad said we had a finance restaurant, in 63 and 64.
Yeah.
So silver coins, and a half, at the time they actually had to buy all your, a lot of people paid us in half dollars.
But it's,
We haven't got a chance to raise,
You
because I've
should buy them
been
for
waiting.
$1.50
And,
so
so
when I say you said it,
we had,
yeah, I mean, it's like, oh,
we just had 2 bags out. But I've noticed down our roads, they get all their yard bags out.
That's
she
good.
really stepped up.
28 W a week, it's silver.
Yeah.
So plus 2 Mercury dimes in there, all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, all silver coins.
Water and sewer, people at the counter, before explaining.
Then it'll be unlimited.
They can get it over the line, I know assessing and sure parks are, you know,
Chamber and treasurer.
Square on the,
Program. I mean, you know, the Grand
I'm a
Prix, you know,
regimented
it's
dude.
gonna be
I bought lightsabers in for Barbara, and I got heat.
the theme.
Okay.
And that was what,
When is this?
sure.
January 20th. Yeah.
That sounds fun.
Well, if you wanna look at this tape right behind you. This is the-
The first thing on the list, Mark.
The big reveal.
Edge of that.
pretty sure they have enough.
I guess it's the second.
Seems to be the trend.
Sure does. But like I say, though, we didn't get you.
No.
They're going around. Okay.
Well, this is my.
That's fine, that's fine.
It
They
has the
don't give away your
secrets.
Yeah, that's secret stuff in there.
You don't even have. I have the round one copy.
Oh, well, you know what, I didn't change anything.
That's what I mean.
Oh, okay.
That's an easy.
Not
I asked for a
everybody
lot
wants
more.
round one.
Did you
Page
get one,
two.
Mary?
Yep, I'm good.
Oh, you just leave them there, I guess.
So I just wanted to show this to Joan first time she's gonna see this.
Oh.
So the library is kind of half the way down there. We've got expenses over revenues, about 200K. Driving that largely is some capital improvements, investing back into the library. The supervisor felt comfortable with that, largely because, I have a pretty good fund balance position.
Okay.
The 1.3 based on the annual expenses, so that's a solid spot to be in, so.
What's the percentage that you're recommending? Is it 35% at this point?
25 to 35 is like healthy and really
Right.
good, and then 10 to 15 is when we start to get your amber orange.
Oh.
That's not the library.
An Amber Alert there.
Yeah,
Okay.
amber alert.
All right.
In the budget department, yeah. Then, this multicolored stuff, if you wheel back to the second page of that, the library is positioned down there. So the orange is one-time events, and the light blue is a reoccurring item.
Oh, okay.
So basically yours is easy, everything is green to the far right, that's a yes. And then it shows the coding for you too, so next year, we'll give you a
Yes. Oh,
copy of
okay.
this down the line.
Okay.
So when this activity happens,
All
we'll
right.
post it and stuff.
Excellent.
But yeah, we had the replacing carpet again, like we just heard with the police department, carpeting in the township was put on hold for a long time, so this is part of the carpeting at the library.
Okay.
We're replacing some exterior lighting,
Yes, yes.
so that's on there.
Mhm.
Some self-service checkout computers, looks like there's 3 of those.
Yeah, we just have, it's been hovering at 40% of the transactions go through those.
We were talking about that the other day, I wonder how much goes through
It does.
one.
And still we have always a little bit of a line at the desk, but people who are waiting for their turn for the more complicated transactions.
It's kind of like at the grocery store.
Yes.
Well, if you don't want to wait, go right there and do it yourself.
Yes,
That's good.
so,
And then some seating, some furniture.
right, right. I'm hoping to entice the friends to, come up with a really great fundraiser for that. We have some in the fund balance, so I'm not worried about it, but I thought maybe that would be an incentive.
Give them a target.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
You notice that 271, she's talking about the Friends.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a different, rather than the regular library fund, that's the donations part, and that's the Friends of the Library. Who are largely a part of that.
Major donor.
We made a note here on the cleaning contract too.
Oh, okay.
We baked that into the budget, but the library gets a good share of that cleaning expense because there's so much of the area is open to the public. It's there to
Right.
serve the public.
Well, and we should be getting 7-day cleaning. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, there you go.
So, I'm hoping that this plays out well. It's just been a challenge this year.
Yeah, we've heard that.
Well, I saw him with a handheld vacuum. That's always trouble. Because they don't pick up anything.
So, yeah, so we're looking forward to that. It's things like just making sure that those restrooms are sanitized every single day. It's like, duh.
Yeah. Priority one there.
So I'm glad to see that. And I'm glad to see that's represented here because I thought, well, how are we going to go for that? All right, great.
In the regular budget book, this document, the library starts on page 46. So the 270 fund is the library, this is the revenues for the Ramona Public Library. The main source of sustenance for the library, what makes it operate possible, is a dedicated millage, and that's the one that you see at the top there. The change that's projected for 2020, 85 to the good. Looking at any other couple changes here. Interest revenue, Barb and I calculate that. Fines, I think, I don't remember, Joan, if we turned to that, or you did, but one of us did.
We are,
Sent that up a little bit.
we are collecting less and less each year in fines, and just for those of you who weren't at the previous meeting, with our new system, it's possible to enable automatic renewal for items that no one's waiting for, that are no fines on, that kind of thing. And as a customer service incentive, we are planning to do that. That's going to be implemented in July of next year, because it will impact everybody's budget who participates in the shared system. And for many of us, fines that are generated by people forgetting to renew, a day or two late or whatever, we're gonna see an automatic reduction in that. There is a huge trend right now in libraries, public libraries, to not charge overdue fines. What is driving that, I think, is the e-content, things that are available electronically. When they're due, they just disappear from whatever your device is, so you don't generate an overdue fine with it. And those formats are increasing in number, the things in that format. And part of the rationale for going in that direction is it's a smaller amount of revenue, not that any penny isn't important, but we do have a large number of families in the township who qualify for the school lunch program. So there are economic issues. And we are hoping that people who are reluctant to get library cards for themselves and their kids, because they don't want to be in the situation of having additional expenditures generated by forgetting something, losing something, whatever. That will encourage them to get library cards, not knowing that they're not going to be subject to overdue fines. So we're hoping that that will be an incentive. We haven't made any decision. The library board and I have been looking at the situation. I am tracking how much of the revenues that we get are actually from overdue fines. And it's a smaller and smaller number. So I think it may be marginal enough that if we forego that, it's not going to be too painful for the library and maybe very good for the community. So,
Could it be offset by the man hours necessary to keep track of that and kind of, is there much in the way of manpower attached to those
not really,
fines?
because it's all automatic. The larger amounts of money we find people owing us are for lost materials, and that's not going to change. If
Right,
you
okay.
lose or damage something, you damage something that belongs to you and the neighbors, so that's something we should be responsible for addressing. But this is just simply, it's a dime a day. So it's like,
That's what I mean.
so.
All right, page 47. It's kind of coming intermixed here a little bit, but you see the 271, that's the donations part. So that's Joan setting a target for the Friends to hopefully meet some of their activities, fundraisers and whatnot. 48 is the donation side. Again, I like that she's giving them a target. Something that's needed and that they can help with, so.
And by the way, save the date, Saturday, May 2, the Friends are holding their third 5K, and they did an excellent job last year. They doubled what they did the first year. And I told them, oh, we should double it again. And they're like, what? I said, you can do it. I know you
You
can
asked
do
for a
it.
home run, you asked for a double.
Yeah, right, that's right. So,
What are the
anyway.
homes? Poetry leagues, what are they?
Poetry Leagues is, deadline is tax day again this year, April 15, and the exhibition will be May 4 through May 15th.
They got two this year.
That's right. You're on my list.
They're horrible.
So.
Double lunch.
We've
No, I
been
missed out last year, so.
happy with that, but, we've had a long time sponsor who is willing to up again, so.
Great.
Oh, that's good.
That's Phil Carmo from Russ's Party Store. He's so funny, he says, oh, I don't know, I sell liquor and this is poetry, and I went, I can't think of a demographic more likely to be a customer than poets.
He's a great guy, really is.
He is, he's just
Very
been
community
wonderful.
oriented and very generous.
Yeah. So, just an FYI, we have retired the car show. We did have the most successful year this last year, however, we have spent 8 months each year planning it, and we haven't
Wow.
generated enough income to justify that kind of staff hours, and it's the staff that has been working on it. I give them credit, they really stretched outside their comfort zone when they said, let's have a car show, and we've done well with it, but it's time to turn our attention to things that are more of our mission, I think, right now, so.
Okay. Okay, page 49. It's the main expenses for the library. So some similar trends to other departments that you'll see in here too. Just looking for major retiree healthcare, that's one we, a little over on our estimate for 19, that's why you see a reduction. That's nothing to get used to, that will not be I'll very much call that an anomaly, so. Contribution for the trust, going up a little bit. And the DB retirement, and you'll see that throughout all the departments' budgets because of what we talked about, the required contribution going up based on the market. Draw your attention down at the bottom, services administration. So the general fund does work for, the library receives benefit from the general fund for services, and this is a partial payment in recognition of that, the 51. I want to say, Barb, what did that end up to be, 23 to 25%, something like that.
Yeah.
In that, so.
Considerably higher.
And that's where the Maximus study comes in, you've heard us talk about that, so. The library, Parks and Rec, and Water and Sewer departments receive an actual charge from the general fund, the other departments do not. Contingency, that's a number there. We have open, I should have mentioned this earlier too, we have open contracts and for a lot of the labor groups, so next year HR will be working with them. And it's only right to set a little something aside, otherwise he's got like nothing to work with, so it's not very thoughtful, so it's a modest number, it would be a modest increase, but it's there. It's in the library as well as the rest of them. Departments that would be affected by that. What else here of note? Contract R&M building on page 50, that's some of where the projects are coded. Let's see. Oh, they're kind of all across the board. You have to pay attention to that, Joan. We got them coded all over the board there.
All right.
So at the bottom there too, 97-1, or 97-106. That's top
Your
two.
public utilities went up $7,000. Which public utilities, is that lighting?
It's all of them.
And if it is lighting, I thought LED cut the cost.
It's
It's all of them. It's
It's
gas. It's
bundled together, the gas and the
water,
electric are.
sewer.
And I've been trying to parse that out. I don't see the bills each month. They're paid as a lump sum. And I don't know if there was a rate increase because our usage has not skyrocketed. So I think it may be a combination of a little more usage and the rate itself.
Right, it seemed to go up a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, and I thought,
It's more
I
than
thought
just,
we did the library, the LED, a couple of years
Yes.
back. and-
it's more than just electric though.
Yeah, I understand the
Gas,
water,
water,
gas.
sewer.
Water sewer increase, I don't know if that's gonna jump at something.
For water or
Water
sewer.
Water and sewer.
Our responsibility.
Okay, just a question.
But you're right, I mean, the electricity's in there too.
Right.
Yeah,
I thought it would save us money to go LED, which it does.
And what phone fall under that, utilities, right?
Phone.
Phones fall under that.
They're
Yeah. Okay.
they're separate.
Are they?
The phones are separate, okay.
Yeah, and the library is on the campus one that's billed to was it the MMRMA,
Yeah.
DTEs,
Right, a shot for that, so,
and then the water, I think are the only three.
and that has gone up a little bit. I imagine, actually, I haven't looked at it, but the last, I feel like I have in the past, they have a pretty good water sewer bill. I mean, cause with the public coming in and the restrooms and stuff, it's pretty good charge there for that. Computer equipment, that's coming from some of Jared's
Yes.
upgrades, I think. That's what that is. So be a minute, talk about those. So that's the crux of that stuff. I'll turn it over to you, Joan, to talk about your.
Thank you so much. Our wish list, they were all number one priorities, so I'm glad you agreed with me.
So, tell them a little about,
Oh, gosh. Well, you know, and quite frankly, we got an estimate for replacing the carpeting throughout the library. That number was just too huge. And, you know, part of the consideration is we would have to be closed for a lot longer to get the work done. So, the areas that we're planning to address are areas where thankfully it's only been my staff who's tripped out there so far. But it's a hazard in some areas. We have carpet, especially where the computers are in adult services, that there's no nap on it now. It's worn down right to the backing. And so we're happy to get an opportunity to replace what's there. We're planning to use carpet squares so that going forward, we can address the room before they just are destroyed. The exterior lights that are along the walkways outside, they were installed in 1993, and they've done great service. They have had their internal parts upgraded to LED, but they are worn. A couple of them have been banged a couple of times by the snow removal, and had some middle schoolers by this spring and just out horsing around, and I kicked one of them over. So I think it's time that we retire them. So, and as I mentioned before, the self-checkout computers, they're capable of only running 2 or 3 earlier versions of the software. So we really need to upgrade the boxes and the hard drives so that they can run the software. And the seating, it's a curious thing. Out in adult services, the chairs that are there for casual seating in the reading area, not the upholstered chairs, but the work chairs at the tables, they're these little wooden cafe kind of things that kind of looked great, but they've never been horribly serviceable. And over the years since 1993, as they've been used, and Americans have become bigger people, they just have broken, and we send them to get repaired, and then we sometimes can't do it anymore with this one. We've repaired it too many times. So some of them are beyond repair, and we started out with probably 25 to 30, and we're down to less than a dozen. So we do need something. What we're planning to do is get chairs that are task chairs like these. They have wheels on them, and they're flexible. Because a big part of the problem is people just lean over backwards, and those little chairs crack. You know, no one's been hurt yet, but
You're not worried about the wheelchairs and people racing and stuff over there, like any drag races or something? You're getting rid of the car show, I mean, this could be the next.
they have juries, it's
I'd be okay with that.
problem.
Okay. You're gonna time them?
Yeah, and, you know, I'll ask the cops to come in and find them.
Hey, generation run.
That's right,
Oh,
that's right. I have to figure out a way to approach God about that. Let's make Waterford roads safer and help our budget, please. So, anyway, I think those are gonna be great improvements. I'm hoping to move them along much more quickly than we've been able to in the past. So I really appreciate the support, because it's all heavily used stuff. It's not as though it's like, you just need a better look out there. That's not even a part of the consideration. So,
And from a risk management standpoint, everything you said to me, when people people haven't got hurt yet, trip hazards,
Right.
those things.
Right.
This is small potatoes
Class
compared
wheelchair.
compared to the lawsuit or the medical bills that
Right.
might
Right.
incur, so.
No, that's most definitely.
Yeah, and just FYI, I've had an offer from someone that they're looking into donating a wheelchair to the library. They've got an aging parent now who lives over at Lord's, and they'd like to bring their mom over, and I said, well, gosh, we don't have anything like that, because our focus has always been on outreach services and going to homebound folks, and, so we've talked about how to implement that. I've talked with Mark about what our liability might be with that, and he quite rightly pointed out, it's a greater liability not to offer that.
I'm actually surprised that we don't have that already, some
Yeah.
sort
Yeah, so,
of access.
right. So we'll see, and right now it just depends on whether or not this is something that potential donor can come through on, but, so.
So that would provide a wheelchair for the library's use, is there?
For people who come into the library and they have some mobility issues, many of our
Right,
patrons, bring their walkers or they do have their own.
Right.
Wheelchairs, but, as with places like the grocery store.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so,
Sorry.
so, if it enables somebody to come in and be able to use the library, all the better, so. But, on the horizon someday, I'd like to open on Fridays again, I just don't know when we can make that happen. Every time we get a little boost in our revenues, our expenses seem to match that, so.
I was surprised that White Lake's closed on Sundays,
Mhm.
and I would think that would be a pretty busy day.
Well, that's why we're open on Sundays. When we were able to pass the operating millage originally, that was the top of the wish list from the community, was they wanted Sunday hours. And they are the most expensive hours of the week for us because our full-time staff get paid double for those hours. But at the same time, per hour, they are the busiest hours of the week. And so I was not comfortable closing on Sunday. And we don't see a great deal of difference in traffic during the school year, during the summer, it's all still the same. And, when we looked at the numbers, it was Fridays that per hour were the least busy. And it's not like it was a lot different, but they just were the least busy. So it's hard for our staff, man. Every time we interview somebody for a position, I'm painfully aware of, the normal work week is Monday through Thursday and Saturday. And it's difficult. So I would love to be able to offer some Friday hours. So.
Joan touched on something that I think is important when you actually work with the Headley rollback. Her millage was approved for 1 mill. And I'm taking this from the 2019 budget book. In 2011, she was able to assess .9118 mills, and that was pretty constant. But in 2018, which is the last year listed here, the mills that were assessed, as she's saying, she goes forward but doesn't feel like she's getting anywhere, her millage rolled back to .8881. So she's allowed to assess the full mill, but because of Headley, she's back to .8881. So that is part of township's problem, but in particular, I think it weighs especially heavy on Joan's department because that's her sole source of revenue is millage. And like I said, I just feel like that's
Creeping up a little bit, but not
Yeah.
with inflation.
No, I mean,
Costs go up.
actually, she's rolling back. In 15, she was at .9118. So revenue-wise, she's
Right.
going
I
forward,
trade
but the
treasuries
ability
here.
to capture that.
Right.
So then she went back to .90, and then .89, and now she's at .88. So as things go up,
Right.
she's not getting there very quickly.
She's
and like I said,
creeping up, but not even at the rate of inflation.
No.
The cost to replace stuff. you're not
And
collecting
this is
revenue
going to be an ongoing discussion of her department, is the fact that every time she tries to make a step forward, just the cost of living or expenses or, cost of inflation is going to make it hard to start really addressing anything like a capital item it's gonna kind of start always eroding her fund balance.
Well, and we have a millage renewal coming up in 2022, and you cannot renew at any greater that way of currently collecting.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a dilemma. We could ask.
You could ask for a new millage on that rate, right?
No, but we could ask, well, not.
You could ask for a brand new millage.
We could, but I think that's a harder sell than a
Well, that's
renewal.
absolutely.
And, you know, we've kind of walked around the idea of a Headley rollback, which is a temporary solution to the problem because, okay, you get rolled back to the full mill and then the Headley process
Mhm.
starts chipping away again. So it's not, we've come up with a solution.
So
yet.
do a Headley override for the year of the election, and then the next year the rollback kicks back in again.
Right, so
Okay,
that's where you kind of just end up with that cycle.
right,
It's
you
a
just,
little shot.
Right.
And then it wears off.
Right, right. But, oh, I did have a question. Derek and I talked about it. It's a little tiny thing, but it's budget time, so little tiny things kind of have a bigger presence. The phone booth that's down by the Riverwalk, we had some vandalism just before the ribbon cutting. And we're all, you know, I think between Parks and Rec and I'm like, well, who takes care of that?
Right.
So I'm not sure if there's a plan for that or if that's still under consideration. Yes. I mean, it was a small thing, but at the same time, it
What type
seems.
of vandalism?
The glass
The
gets broken a
plexiglass,
lot.
I mean, at least it's plexiglass.
Okay.
But we don't know for sure if it was vandalism or the lawnmower going by.
Seriously.
So a broken window.
But either way,
Plexiglass.
it's a topic in which
Yeah.
it was a
It's a cost of ownership.
grant-related
Right,
item.
Was it
right,
grant
that's a
item?
grant item.
And so now we have it, and it's kind of in that middle zone, as it's the library and Parks and Rec happen to be like actively putting
Right.
information in the display, so then, and F&O maintains it, but, you know, or replaces glass, where is the cost going to be? Because that is an underlying topic with many donations.
Well, and I
So it's
hesitate to ask F&O for help with that. I mean, they're struggling over there right now and covering all the bases. And, I mean, that's, sure, it's not a lot of time, but it's extra time, you know, so I just wanted to ask you how you want us to handle it.
You say there's 3 entities that are involved with the FNO, library,
Yes, and
and
Parks
Parks
and
and
Rec.
Rec?
Yeah, Parks
So
and Rec.
1/3's on the thing, or
Okay.
if not, have somebody volunteer if they want it, which they probably won't take it.
Right.
So you split it in 30.
Well, and I
Split the
just,
cost.
when it was my staff that discovered it, because they had gone down to take some old postings out and put new ones in. And I said, I don't know who takes care of this, and I just thought, okay, I'm just gonna contact F&O and ask them if they can help out, because the ribbon cutting was like in 4 days. So, you know, they were great sports, and they, yeah, no problem, took care of it. But I thought, you know, going forward, we need to have a plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
so where does an F&O come in?
The maintenance, the actual physical maintenance.
Physical maintenance,
Take the
right?
glass out, put new glass in.
Exactly, right, yeah.
Right, and then who pays for the materials? You know, it came out of their budget this time,
Right.
so,
It's just kind of, it's not the hugest thing in the world, but it is a thought.
And
for-
again, it underscores the
We,
point that
whenever we
when
accept a
get-
donation or put something up, the
Right, we
thought,
need to
the
be-
cost
Oh,
of
sure.
ownership, kind of like when we, actually this sign right here,
yes.
when we had plantings all around it, well, who's gonna plant, you know?
Yeah,
Well, DPW, no.
Who's gonna
We're
take
stopping
care
off
of
and
it?
watering it, and like,
right,
it's not the end of the world, it's another thing. It's-
you know.
And there's the
So-
sum total of all those things, and like.
Is that the thing that you want, or do you want something that's lower cost? Is it gonna hold up? Just all those kinds of questions come into play,
Mhm.
depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
You know, worth the aesthetic way of looking at it versus maintenance and cost ownership way of
That's how
looking
much
at
money you got too.
it. Yeah,
What's the nicer stuff you're gonna pay?
Right,
yeah.
You know, you got a little cheaper, well, let's cut the cost somewhere.
so, but it's just one of those things where it was, I don't think it's a big burden, and I wouldn't object to, you know, covering the cost of it, but it's like, well, that's one more thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a big burden right now, but say somebody came and broke all the glass out of it, so, you know, something that really needs to be addressed.
I was
Sooner
privy
than
to
later.
Parks and Rec, and you, I mean, you guys are the ones that
Mhm.
use it, the
Right.
benefit,
Right.
receive benefit from it.
Exactly, exactly. So, but just tossing that out there.
No, it's a good question.
Yeah, because I don't think either department truly, you know what I mean, it kind of fell between, it was a grant opportunity.
Right.
So it wasn't a library initiated grant, and it wasn't a Parks and Rec initiated grant. So that's where it all, so again, it was paid for. It's just that they happen to be the ones who post information through it.
Waterford doesn't really have a pedestrian pathway millage. It used to, you know, have the sidewalk millage, it went away. So it's kind of a vacuum.
I can fall under that.
But yeah.
If there's a lot of snow or something, who cleans it? Is it cleaned?
It's the first year that in which it's been put in place,
Right.
so that's why this has come up,
Well,
and
snow is gonna be here in just a short time.
This week.
It's not waiting for
Might as
us.
well think a little quicker.
I didn't know you'd lose that dirty four-letter word on camera.
But we've already been
Something.
planning to post things that have a long life in there, so
Yeah.
we don't have to worry about changing them out until.
I don't think the snow,
I mean, the leaves will blow away.
all the postings are up high enough. You
The
can
snow
read
will
them.
melt.
Snow will melt, yeah. The snow's even.
Snow will melt.
We'll just close it from December to March or something, you know.
They'll run right into the river, so we're.
however,
Oh, wow.
if there's vandalism or a stone knocks it out from the plow truck that went on the street, who's maintaining the
I don't think we have to worry
place?
about plow trucks in Waterford Township, so we're safe there, so.
I'm glad
Gonna
you
be on the
said,
bad side of the town.
I'm glad you said, I don't want Dennis to be mad at me no more.
Oh, you're talking about road commission trucks, I think you're talking about private plow trucks.
That's what I was talking about, that's what I assumed.
RCOC. Yeah, well, all the talk was make sure you don't hurl any rocks up towards it, so that's good.
Okay.
And it's clever and it's been, you know, a point of interest
I
and.
haven't heard anything bad about it, again, that's it, like you say, things pop up in the township and people go on social media, you see where cowards come out of the
Yeah.
closet and bash this and bash that, but I haven't heard one negative thing. The two things on the Crescent Lake corridor, I didn't even negative, the corn stand,
Yes.
didn't hear one bad word about that from anybody. And nothing about negative about the phone booth, so we gotta keep doing things up and down Crescent
You know,
Lake.
I got a solution for
Yeah.
shoveling the snow and getting the snow away. Community service, talk to the
Yeah.
courts,
That's a good
get
idea.
them over there,
That's a good
you
idea.
know?
But sometimes when you do that, and again, you get union grievances because you're taking away,
They're,
Yeah.
you know, it's.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but F and O, it's not their baby, it's the
No, right.
libraries
It's the library and Parks
and
and
Parks and Rec, so
Right, so,
That would be
they're improving the
private.
community, you gotta do community service
I would
someplace.
spite to see a resident go on and clean out snubble around that, there are people that were on.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
They do.
When
Invite
the-
the scouts to do it.
When
What's
the
that?
Invite the
development
Boy
goes
Scouts
in.
to do it.
How about the brownies are, they were there last night, the ones.
Oh, the energy they have,
They
they
can
can
sing
do it
out.
real quick.
Piggyback off of
They
that
got some
for
energy,
the,
I know that,
Yes.
but they sing
At
too
some
loud, they can
point.
crack the
Yeah,
glass,
I
so you
wonder
gotta be
where
careful on
that-
that too, so.
Is in
Oh, that was
relationship
hilarious,
to-
wasn't it?
it
Oh,
was
that's-
adorable.
Oh, I was
Yeah.
thinking that
And
the
the
Riverwalk
next
is.
verse, they've been
I've
amping
not
up,
seen
the
those
next one
plans,
started
but I
singing
assume
louder and
that
louder.
everything-
I heard they were on my side, and louder and louder.
So.
And it shares.
And to my amazement, none of them
It
knocked
works
none of our
over, so I
nameplates
will
off.
No.
I was waiting for mine to go.
Just the
I was
first part.
grab it, they were too
Yeah,
little.
Pedestrian.
No, there was a couple of good sized ones there.
Complex,
You were there,
and then
weren't you?
pro- connects
Oh, wasn't that hilarious?
Right.
It was,
Just-
it was,
so-
and all I could think was, for what is to come on the agenda, this is a beautiful start.
Yes, for what is to come, this is a beautiful start.
You can't script things, it just happens.
Oh, they were great.
They were funny.
You know, John, the other thing I was gonna talk to you about, it might even include Parks and Rec. Has it ever been thought about, because you're dealing with senior citizens, and so is Parks and Rec, defibrillators?
We have them.
You do?
Yeah,
Wonderful.
the first, we have one. The first one we got, the Friends donated. And then when we needed to do the upgrade, we just went ahead and got new. So we try to keep it up to spec.
And people are trained to use them?
Yeah, in fact, we are coming up on another renewal of CPR training for our staff, and we just invited the trainers to come over, and, you know, I just tell the staff, you all have to go. And
Does Parks and Rec have one? Do you know?
I think there's one at the Walker Rec Center. There's a
I
defibrillator.
I thought at one point defibrillators might have been put
Yeah.
in a good
You know
number of
what?
locations. I don't know if it was F&O or the fire department or whatever department kind of spearheaded that.
Might even been a grant that John got to get them to.
I just do not remember specifically. I think there's signage.
Yeah, we got one on each floor here.
Yep, you got one in front.
And I think when Hugo was here, he tried to work and put signage as to where they're located and so forth. I think it's on that plan.
I think they're already up. Those have been up.
I talked to Jim Cooper from the fire department. He's going to come to Township Hall and offer CPR and training on those as well very shortly.
Yeah, because I think it kind
It's
of,
been a while since.
right, that's
Your
exactly what
trains
happened. They
are
got put in,
Yeah.
they get made tamed,
Yeah,
but then
I had
it
asked
it falls.
Arlene,
Yeah, same
you know,
here.
who on the floor and how
Well, it's been
who's
about-
been trained, and she
I
did.
took
If you
it
can't
to
remember,
the
it's time
silver
to.
trophy.
Right, that's exactly it. So
Well, and then
that's
they
to
trained the
that
one on
point,
our
it's a-
floor, who was the one that was, we figured was gonna be the one to collapse, so
Yeah.
it was Cat.
Oh.
Yeah, well,
Has anybody ever seen the other things they have, the Lucas things?
that's a great piece of equipment.
Those are amazing. It's a machine that does compressions.
Really?
Yeah.
It's spectacular. It's amazing. We just saw it at that ops thing. It was,
Well,
We have them here.
and we have them everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A
Each
lot of
truck.
departments don't have them yet. We have them
We're
in
in,
all of
As
our.
in
our
the fire
department's in the
department.
21st century.
Yeah, and they have the wireless, the cable-less jaws and pry bars and stuff. So they use them more than they ever did now, because they can take them anywhere. They
And it's
just
the
pick them up
most,
and carry them.
it was the most recent technology for the advancement in the steel that goes into vehicles, so, you know,
And I think a grant was written for the jaws.
Yeah,
90-10. Yep, it was a 90-10.
Did you take the fire on?
I did. I did. Yeah, we both did. It was a blast. We had, it was, I would recommend everybody do it if you get the opportunity. It was off the charts good.
It's an eye opener for sure.
Yeah, it was real good.
So guess what, next year?
There's pictures somewhere.
I was the first one.
Yeah. Your name came out.
They know they don't have ours.
Well, I remember the Jaws of Life thing.
And a good thing, in a
And
good
it was
way.
this big guy that's holding it, and I thought, oh, and then when he handed it to me.
It was like, oh, yeah. First thing I got to do was cut a windshield, which was
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. This
Yeah.
little tool about this big, you just kind of put a hole in the windshield and you open it up and the saw, and 3 saws, you go across the whole half of the windshield. And he goes, can you turn it now? And I was like, you didn't tell me I had to turn it. He goes, well, you have to turn it to go around it. So he goes, just put another hole in it and bring it down. He goes, once you get good at it, you just do it in one swipe and you go around the whole thing. And I'm like, wow. But I mean, it cut like butter. I mean, it was, whatever that tool is, it was pretty amazing stuff. That's quite a facility out there. So, I mean, and it's
Where was
right-
that at? Was that at
OCC?
OCC?
Yeah, the Crest,
Yeah.
right?
It's in Auburn, yeah.
Auburn Hills, yeah.
Auburn Hills, too.
Yeah, they usually have each campus does something, you know, and that's that.
I would recommend you guys do that if you get the opportunity. It was real good. So, that and the police academy, the Citizens Police Academy, another really, that's why dispatch, we were talking about that this morning, that's the working mechanism of the whole thing.
Right.
You know, those ladies down there are men, and I happen to be with ladies, and I can't believe I can't even imagine what they go through mentally, not to mention knowledge.
Well, a lot of times you get
So-
people called in, they're upset, and it's
Yeah.
hard to understand them, and they
Oh, yeah.
they have a way of getting calmed down, getting information out of them, to get things done in a quick manner, and it's amazing. The abilities they have, just amazing.
Then there's people in the library who deal with all the people that want to take out all the books. It's just another amazing position.
That's an interesting customer service.
Well, you know, I know that you get our reports, well, monthly. When we upgraded to the new system, all of the participating libraries realized that we needed to do a better job maintaining that database and getting the debris out of it. And we purged a lot of old records And so our card holder number went down, and we are working hard to increase it. It's at about 29% of the population has cards. And what we find is that we're generating between 200 and 300 new cards every month. But because we're purging the database of expired cards and old things, we're just treading water with that one. So I haven't quite figured that one out. It would be helpful if the schools would, start bringing classes over to, do a library visit. They can't quite make their way to do that. They do not take us up on an offer to come in and talk about libraries to schools, just for us, they just can't quite fit that in, so. Kind of missing an opportunity.
Oh, for sure.
So we just have to, we're just still exploring opportunities, but, that's a concern for us because we know that, it's a heavily used operation. It's not that we're not waiting at the door for people.
I wonder if you could you throw something in chamber literature?
Yeah, we've done that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know
not
the
recently.
things show up occasionally, I'm just wondering if there's,
Yeah, so, we just have to figure out a cohesive plan, rather than doing something sporadic. So if you ever wonder about that, it's not as though we are not working on it, but we are keeping that database in fighting trim, and the consequences, we are having trouble moving that number. So, yeah.
Joe, do you have wireless hotspots? It's something that people can check out?
Yeah, in fact, a lot of people on Friday who you see sitting in their cars in the parking lot are using our wireless connection.
Oh, the ones you can take with
Oh,
you, that
no,
you can.
yeah, we haven't invested in that at this point. We have, the hotspots we have are what the staff take when we do the movies under the moonlight and the business expo and that kind of thing. And I can't remember the last time we talked about that.
All your libraries are doing that?
Yeah.
You check them out like for a week?
Yeah.
Yes.
They go up to their cabin and they plug it in and they've got Wi-Fi. They're very popular. In fact, my son, who spends a lot of time up north, you can only do it 1 week a month. You're not allowed to do it
Oh, I was
on our
gonna say,
library
sure.
system.
Right.
Because otherwise people
Sure.
would just.
Well, sure, I mean, you're gonna pay for that on your phone.
Oh, yeah, I'm agreeing to bring that back. Yeah, I think it's not so much that it's not appropriate, it's just how do you manage it? How do you make a demand resource available to the greatest number of people? So, we kind of walked around that and I think we've gone on to other things like, yeah, someday we'll do that. So,
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. And give the good news to the staff. Yes, we're gonna get new cars.
All right.
Only after the budget is approved in December, but
Yes.
tentatively.
You start picking up colors, I suppose.
Make sure you let them know right now for that new truck, all the guys that can't tell back, so it's not.
I think we're already painfully aware of that. This is kind of a dumb thing, but when I was in library school, my advisor, he had done time in a university library somewhere in the Midwest, and when he got there, he said, here I am, the director of the library, blah, 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 blah. And on the window ledge there, these 3 dead flies. And so he went back and forth with the maintenance guy and finally realized that he wasn't gonna get any traction with anything he did there when the maintenance man responded to his final reminder. Well, I'll take care of that as soon as I build the coffin for them.
Oh, my
And there's been a dead fly on the window ledge at the end of the hallway in the library, and I thought, are we waiting for a coffin? So I'm happy that you guys made a decision last night to try and rectify that. That's gonna be great. So, anyway, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Joe.
Gary, that part-time officer Scott was talking about, I think Blake Hershey,
Yes.
just sent out an email to all the board members, basically saying his job is being threatened to be terminated if he doesn't go full-time. You guys read it in a minute. It came on my phone.
You know, it's one of those things.
Yeah, we approved in 2013 for the police department, because remember, we're not gonna hire any more police officers until we close the pension system. So we have staffing approved of them to hire part-time people because they would not be in the old pension system. So that said, once they close up the pension system and the economy recovered, we got the SAD. Now it's time for a full-time police
Yeah, it's
officer.
funny getting an email right after Scott done his budget there, when we were talking about it. And I got the email 11/21, I think it was.
Right.
That is rather timely, isn't it?
Very, very timely. And he basically said if he doesn't take part-time, his job's done.
Well, they said they're eliminating part-time police officers.
He said that the chief won't give no reason why. He said it's part-time.
Well,
You guys read the email.
It doesn't work.
No, you're right.
It's not part of the plan. Nope.
you guys wanna hit the, lunch isn't quite here yet, I guess, if they're in route. Do you wanna hit something else, or?
What do you want to hit?
Improvement revolving? Just to
Yeah,
take a
higher up, sure.
Cruise through that. We're gonna hit it with, some other departments that come in, but I thought just so the board was kinda up to speed with what we have there. So if you spin over to page 36.
Get your kids on page 36.
Okay, so we've talked about the improvement revolving fund being an offshoot of the general fund. The revenue that it's dependent upon revenue from the general fund to make things happen. You see that down there with the third from the bottom, contribution general fund, that's what's making this happen. So whenever it's possible to, typically we try to do that at the end of the year, put money in here, it's important to do so. That 45,000 is a grant from the economic development for the Riverwalk extender over there on Crescent Lake Road, just so you know what that is. That's carried over from last year. It was kind of a split between the township proper and economic development. So that's where that's coded. That's the revenue side of that transaction. Okay, so let's spin over to page 38. And also, you can kind of see on this larger paper, this multicolored one, we've got where it says township wide in the upper left. That's really the improvement of all of them.
Probably page one.
Looks like it's
Well, I mean,
fifth bat, yeah.
yeah.
It says township
Well, you're not
wide.
looking at that one, here. One more. The very last time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
So, and then actually, on
Oh,
page
excuse me.
39,
Bless you.
Thank you.
this was the one part of the budget where we actually, after we get through this whole process, the next couple days, we send the budget out to all the department heads, ask them to complete this form for the department, all the changes that have happened and stuff. Barb and I did that for this fund because there's a lot of activity and projects going on, so we didn't want to, it's hard to just look at the numbers and remember what everything was, so we kind of have it categorized out there. And then like when Rob Marinsky comes in, we'll spend to this, and then when DPW comes in, we'll look at this too. But 84,500. And we'll ask Rob where he's at with that. I don't think that drain study, the township does own a few drains that it's responsible for. They're township-owned drains, not county drains. And he was gonna have a study done to see the condition assessment, basically, to see where, because it's another thing that was deferred for many years, so it's needed. Similar idea that he did with the sidewalks a few years back.
So you're starting at this year, so in case it doesn't get finalized this year,
Kind of staged for
it's
next year.
staged for next year.
97,000, we've talked about that a little bit. Phase 1 of the streetlights, to roll that program out into the neighborhood. so that is a good thing, I believe. But it's discretionary, the board can take that out of there, it's nothing that you're mandated to do, but 1-year ROI looks pretty compelling, starts to make the township look more uniform, I think,
Reduces
to
the
match the other.
carbon footprint. The 60,000 that's here, on the revenue side is $10,000 that would be paid by, as a rebate or, from DTE. So the net township would be paying is actually 50,000.
We're trying to get rid of mercury vapor, the federal government's trying to get those out of the system, so.
Yeah, so again, we're putting the true expense here, but 10,000 is, on the revenue side.
It's from where? Where was the 10,000?
It's in the, revenue side, so back 2 pages.
Right, but.
It's a grant.
It's a grant.
Yep, so you'll see that increased by 10,000,
Yeah.
and that's specifically what it's related to.
And then 97010, capital infrastructure, that's the connector on the boulevard next to the middle school. It's in disrepair to get that replaced. There's also, if I'm not mistaken, in that quote, it includes a sidewalk to run along the side.
Yes.
From the middle school on, and set the fence back from the police department to keep the kids from walking on the street and stuff like that. I think there's room there for the board to sit down with the school board and say, hey, we're willing to do this for you, a little bit of goodwill.
The map of
You know,
that is on the next.
I think there's some
page.
conversation that could happen there. I mean,
Yep.
Yep, on the next page is an aerial, showing the,
Yeah.
and again, this is kind of like the edge of the township's property, but the school is not engaged in like jointly maintaining it. So again, this would be from the township's portion all the way to, Hatchery. And then the sidewalk would be an addition, it would be at the edge of our property and then probably touch base with the school district to make sure that, you know, it's fine, that we've got the sidewalk in there, which I'm sure they would be supportive of.
And when they get that torn up, they're gonna reactivate the sprinkler system over on the island there, where it all fried this year and cooked. They're gonna, that was there, when they open, they're gonna bring back underneath, hook it back up.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it just like you said, you got all the nice green grass and all of a sudden you got that, and I mean, I don't know what happened. We had plenty of rain this year, and that just cooked over there, I don't know. I don't know what happened to it.
97-102, that's the Riverwalk connector. This is the general funds contribution, and then economic development, like we mentioned, is on the revenue side. On the other page. 97-105, that's a new item, again, not required by the township, but it's kind of as much an open question to the board, I think, and that's, you know, the township getting involved again with the neighborhood SADs, like if a neighborhood wants to get their road redone and walk around and get the signatures, this is an allocation where the township could contribute to helping facilitate that or encourage that, to make that happen. I would think want to work with Rob's group, and maybe it's something up to 10% or not to exceed 75,000, but it would be it's kind of, they did it in the past, and I don't have the history to know like when that stopped and stuff, but.
And some board members in the recent past have expressed interest in having something, so that is a starting dollar figure and a starting point for the program if it's gonna be promoted.
Yeah, back when they did that, that was a lot of them, those were first time paving projects there, and they were encouraging people, and of course, my crew was framing 45 houses here in Waterford Township, and that's one out of probably 20 crews. I mean, there was a lot of money coming in, and they were able to put some of it back out. And the new subs were getting paid, but they got the existing subs to go ahead and get paid too, so they were put some incentive up to a 10% match on those, and it worked well. 10%, anytime somebody gave you 10% on your money,
Take it.
Art will tell you,
Absolutely.
take it.
That's a good number.
Yeah. Easy one, bigger.
97-109, that's one of the capital project. That's basically the first floor township hall, starting in the auditorium with some of the seating, and then seeing how far we get from there. Those are based on some rough quotes and stuff like that. That's another thing I should mention too. So at the DPW, we have our engineering position is open, the F&O superintendent position is open. So a lot of this is, gonna be charged to somebody that hopefully we can hire or get on board to do this, so. These are just kind of rough projects, but that's the board saying, that the first floor here needs some attention.
The auditorium seating you were talking about, you said some of them are bad, or?
No, we're looking at starting with that. Like with
And
this,
maybe the carpet.
yeah, the carpeting and the seating, we're starting with that
It's best to do
project.
it all at once.
Do it all one time, okay, thank
Take
you.
it
the
all
seats
once.
out, put the carpet
I thought you
down.
were gonna piece it out,
No,
a
it's-
few chairs.
The
And I
bathrooms
think
need
cable, and I think
attention.
cable wants to run some
Carpeting
more
around
lines
Margaret's
on
area
that.
needs attention.
Well, it's
Yeah,
all
carpeting
tore
in
up.
the treasurer's
Okay.
office if it gets that far, but if not,
How far can we get based on updated quotes and what we're
Okay.
hearing? and what we're-
Just up to Margaret's office and then that.
She's probably won't be included.
Yeah, your little handheld vacuum up there.
No carpeting, just a hand.
We'll buy you a new vacuum.
Black and Decker.
We're gonna get you a broom too if you want.
There was a senior came up to the counter, he says, "Will you take a walk with me?" So we went down, and he sits down on one of the chairs in the auditorium, he says, "These new chairs are horrible."
In the auditorium.
I said, "These aren't new chairs." "Oh, they're not? Okay," and he got up and left. He thought we got new chairs and you were bad.
And he was still singing about
It
it.
was, the new chairs were horrible. I said, "These aren't new chairs." He said, "They're not." I said, "Okay." See you later.
but in turn, it's the auditorium and the carpet in the
Yeah,
auditorium
okay.
are your first two things, and then again, if it extends to Margaret's area or another project on the first floor, if not, we'll have to circle back and finish up the first floor and then possibly move to
Okay,
the second.
when was the
third,
last time the auditorium had a makeover?
I have no memory of it ever happening in my career.
Maybe not.
I think that's all original stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Really?
new carpet.
Thank you.
Demo day.
Like in
Yeah.
Dunbar,
When-
oh, one
We need to do a
road
demo
too.
day,
was-
like a redo.
Seats are
We just did.
Seats are all original.
Late '70s.
Late 70s?
Yeah.
And then there was a
December
couple
first,
of
1979 is the
2005
official
bonds
opening
or
date on
something.
the pencils that they have. You've got them in your office, don't you?
It was beautiful. when
I'd
I
have to
became a
double
resident.
check on that,
The
but.
December 1st,
It's
1979.
on the plaque and the door.
20 years
Okay.
ago.
Well, I guess the
There's a
township got
plaque.
their money's worth
What
there.
door?
20 years
Yeah.
ago.
The
I
town
moved
hall.
out here in
There's
'86.
a
Beside
plaque
you?
hanging up,
Our
yeah,
town council
right
originally
by,
used to not
inside
like
that.
They did
No,
it
I
right
know
from
it's
the
doors.
Okay, yeah.
You know, there's a plaque, December 1,
The
1979.
vestibule?
Yeah.
It's probably cheap
First
too.
floor?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Tax-wise, was it cheaper?
It was interesting. And then
Was
when
it?
we bought our house, we chose Waterford. We just, we looked all over the place.
Oh, when you
Union
moved
Lake
from there,
and-
okay.
And we only moved a mile. I mean, we moved up the block a mile.
You're still moving on up?
That's where I am.
To the top.
97-107, we have some cemetery improvements, signage and some other things that they brought forward. And 97-125, door controllers, that would be the general fund share of that project
Project in
at
DPW.
DPW, yeah.
And then the phone system is complete, so that was a very large decrease, which again became a paving project, it's kind of like was on one.
Why is 09 and 07 out of order there, just out of curiosity?
So you would have something to notice.
Right, yeah, I mentioned that.
Well, I'd said the bigger number over the littler number, that back there bigger, so it wasn't that, so.
So you could, so now you're in a tie with Art, so you had an opportunity.
We put things in here for you guys to also.
Yeah, to see if you're reading.
surprise. So you'll never
All right, we
know.
might be going to overtime.
I like red and green.
Well, that is that. Arlene has called the sandwich place, hopefully they're gonna be here soon, so.
I think
Yeah, I think
it's
they're
already
here.
out there.
Oh, are
Was
they
it
here?
Jimmy John's? It's been out there.
Good. Alrighty, lunchtime.
We're back at one.
You're not yet roll.
I just printed out the one in my. Fire suppress.
I have to go to work this
No,
afternoon.
that's good.
But I have tomorrow completely set. I'll
Yep,
be here.
Yep, I remember you saying the first day.
Morning until the end of the day, so.
That's good. Tomorrow we wrap
This is
up
the
a lot,
first
so
one
that'll be
after-
great.
Well, I know, and I'm gonna, if I